Our MC Frey Rayon Starlight, a hero, sided with the Demon King and chose to destroy the world. After completing his task, he handed down the legendary hero's blade he used, and the Demon King called him vile for acting like a hero and cutting down his family and lover on her own bid. The reason Frey did it was to become her subordinate, and after seeing how helpful Frey was, she acknowledged him and fulfilled his wish. Deep down, he noted that it was the only path he could take. One by one, he had slaughtered his supposed comrades and the princess of the kingdom who held against the demonic forces. All his former colleagues cursed him regretfully for trusting him, but his lover Serena accepted her fate and told him that she still loved him regardless. The Demon King then commended him for his act and told him to destroy the sword, but he surprised her by unsheathing it and revealing that he planned to die with her. This was a path that only he could take to save the world and his dead loved ones. After their clash, Frey wakes up, this time around much younger, and he realizes that he has regressed to the day before his entrance into the academy. He checks the system and sees he's been given the path of the villain title. For fulfilling the quest by dying alongside the Demon King after slaying his friends, Frey unlocks the hidden route, and this time around, he vows to save everyone. About 10 years ago, before Frey enrolled into the academy, he asks his dad the meaning of the worm-like letters shown on the piece of paper he's holding, and the old man tells him they are called kana. He explains that only those who inherit the bloodline of the heroic House of Starlight can read them. That's when Frey realizes that his dad was talking about the letters written all over the old books. The man, in turn, quietly guides Frey to an entrance and tells the boy to go in alone. Curious, Frey asks him why. So the old man tells him to stand firm because based on the prophecy about their bloodline hero who vanished alongside the Demon King after defeating the evil ruler, the Demon King would remerge once more after 1,000 years. Not only that, but a new hero who will save the world will also be born. But that's only the first part of the prophecy publicly known, and the remaining part is that the Demon King and the new hero's successor will appear in the current era. Realizing what it means, Frey is ushered into the dark room, and then his father shuts the door on him. The boy immediately yells and bangs the door like every normal kid would, but then he notices a soft glow, so he follows the trail and arrives at the legendary hero's sword. He tries touching it, but then a hologram appears and warns him not to. Spooked, Frey asks for the figure's identity, and the man reveals he's Frey's ancestor. Frey doubts him at first since the statue of the great hero is very handsome, and this pisses the legendary hero off. The dude then asks Frey if he came to learn how to conquer the world, but Frey replies that he showed up since his father told him that's how he can get to protect his loved ones. Since the reasons sound similar to the hero, he tells Frey that the current world can end up being hard and not just have a bad ending. The terms confuse the poor boy, so the hero places his palm on Frey's face and immediately the boy witnesses the demons destroying the world and tells him it's the world's fate if he takes the wrong route. After seeing how he lost all his loved ones in the trance, Frey falls to the ground and gasps, and the hero notes that it's because it's the boy's first time. Tear-jerked and determined, Frey vows to do it, swearing like his ancestor that he'll protect everyone he loves. The past hero nearly forgets that Frey is his successor, so he promises to teach Frey the path to take to protect everyone he holds dear. He repeats the process by placing his hands on the boy's fate, noting that it won't be an easy path, because Frey would have to destroy the world with his own hands and die with the Demon King. Only then would he unlock the hidden route and see the new trials that await him, so he hopes the boy doesn't lose heart. In the present timeline, after 10 years, Frey notes that everything has progressed smoothly. But the one thing that is different is the presence of the system. While waiting for the system to update, Frey notes that it is a new ability that'll be useful in the future he'll encounter. He compares it to what he saw in the Book of Prophecy when he was little, and notes that he can handle any problems at his first trial based on what his ancestor had shown him. Then, if he masters the system, he can protect everyone in the end. Just then, Kanya knocks on the door, and Frey happily tells her to come in, believing that he'll catch a break with her. After all, it's been a while since he saw her smile. As soon as the system completes its update, it warns Frey about someone approaching, and in that moment, Kanya walks in, and the system informs Frey that the 5 main heroines retain memories from the previous cycle. That's when it dawns on him that he's in trouble. The rules of the system is to ensure that Frey, who is playing the false villain, must continue committing vile acts to earn points, and if his good deeds are discovered, his life force will be severely diminished. He currently has about 100 points, and he can use the accumulated points to purchase necessary items or skills. After warning Frey about the heroine's awareness, the system does an emergency activation. Frey is shocked by the result, and from the death glare he gets from Kanya, he senses her strong, murderous intent. She is his childhood friend who was cursed from birth with dark magic that saps her life force, and is one of the 5 main heroines mentioned in the prophecy. Now that she's retained her memories, Frey fears that Kanya will kill him at any moment due to how harshly he treated her in the past. Kanya then asks him if he's hungry, so he tells her to bring him the usual. She glares at him before leaving to fulfill his command, and he freaks out knowing that she is out for his blood, so he makes up his mind to prepare for her retaliation. Suddenly, the system pops up and informs him that it has detected a strong murderous intent nearby. This is caused by one innate skill that detects one life-threatening threat per day. Frey logically tries to deduce why Kania would want to kill him, noting that she won't get away unscathed if she tried it. But just then, she opens the door, and he senses death emanating from the soup she's brought him. Realizing that she must have cursed the food with dark magic to drive him to an untimely death, Frey realizes he's been cornered, so he decides to act his villainous role, and he does that by yelling at her for bringing soup, saying he wanted sandwiches before throwing the dish at the wall close to her. By being wicked, he earns one false villain point. Detested, Kania walks off angrily to make his sandwich, and a few minutes later, she shows up with an eerie sandwich. To her surprise, he tells her there's no cheese, so she should remake it. Kania tries to object, but Frey boldly questions her for talking back at him. As a result, she backs down and shows up later with another sandwich, but he tells her the bread is too dry. Frey makes her go at it for a couple of times, and by the 8th trial, she staggers while holding the sandwich which she had poisoned. And he sees how persistent she is, noting that Kania kept on remaking and imbuing the sandwiches with her magic till she was completely drained. He picks up the sandwich and pretends as if he wants to eat it, and this makes Kania eager, but then he tosses the sandwich away and says he'll rather have the soup from before. As he tells her to remake it, Kania falls. But he catches her and notes how cruel fate is for not letting him laugh with her, even if for a little while. He places her on his bed, while noting that earning false villain points is more life-threatening than he thought. Seeing how low Kania's magic is, Frey replenishes her cursed body with his life force, noting that it's the only way to stabilize his dark magic. Since he isn't going to live long, he concludes that filling her up with his life force is the way forward. After doing that, Frey thinks about how to escape his ridiculous situation, since there's no way for him to continue with the original plan. While noting that in the next 2 months before the main quest begins, he had planned to stay low and make subtle preparations without revealing his identity. But with the way things are going, that might not be the case anymore. Not knowing how to cleverly deal with the remaining 4 heroines whom he hasn't met, Frey prioritizes the meeting order and notes that Serena, his fiancée, doesn't require immediate attention. Princess Klana, on the other hand, is an abandoned royal who doesn't have the power to act against him, so she won't give him any trouble, unlike Felroach and Irina, who he'll run into frequently at the academy. Felroach's case is that she's a naive pawn of the church who can socially destroy him, with her backing. But Irina is the bigger threat because she's reckless and impulsive. This means she can kill him on sight without hesitation. Kania is also at a situation where she's powerless because of her sister, who is a hostage. But then Frey has to gather false villain points no matter the risk, so he'll end up pissing her some more. He notes that the points he can gather from Kania are very limited, so it's best that he acquire riskier points by interacting with the other heroines. Now with the information he's gathered from the Book of Prophecy and his past life, Frey plans to organize everything the next day and prepare for the real battle, which begins after he enrolls in the academy. Frey ends up studying the prophecy book till the next sunrise. He looks back at Kania, who is sleeping soundly, and then lifts her from his bed and places her on the ground. After heaving a sigh of relief, he yells at her, scolding her for sleeping for so long. Startled, Kania looks around and realizes she slept off in his room. She stares at him judgmentally to check if he did anything to her, but he then orders her to hurry and prepare the carriage since it's his first day at the academy. Kania gets up and leaves as she's told, and only then does Frey look at his status window and confirms he has 100 points. He sighs, noting that the points are too little, and he'll need a few hundred to buy skills, so he'll have to continue earning them, but a bit to avoid dying. While watching Kania prepare the carriage, Frey smiles through his displeasure, and he says his time in the academy will be fun. Later that evening, after Frey gives the entrance ceremony speech, nobles surround Frey and praise him, hoping to earn his favor. He entertains their thoughts while noting that they are vultures whose ulterior motives are so obvious. One of the students informed him that they'd like to propose placing their products in the royal palace, which is why they've brought some commoner women for his enjoyment. Frey decides to play along with them, so he tells them he'll consider their request once he sees their sincerity, when in reality he's disgusted by their behavior and wishes to do something about them. Just like he wants to take down the Demon King, but for the time being, he has to earn points. He earns points faster by acting scummy with the nobles, and all of a sudden, he sees the boys dragging the ladies into the room and then realizes that they had brought in Irina. Frey refuses to believe his eyes that Irina got caught because she's a genius when it comes to elemental magic, with fire being her special element. It seems impossible for anyone to deal with her, so he wonders if she intentionally got caught to take out everyone present in the room at once. Frey instantly opens his system store and looks at the skills he can purchase. With the amount of points in his arsenal, he picks the emergency defense skill. The skill protects the target from a fatal blow once. Although it costs 70 points to purchase, Frey doesn't hesitate to get it since he knows his life is on the line. After acquiring it, he learns that Irina is suffering from mana depletion, which seems unusual to him, so he concludes that she plans to store up mana and explode it at once. While she struggles with the nobles, Frey tells them to get lost, and they are stunned by his attitude. He repeats himself, this time around in an angrier tone, declaring that he wants to have fun with the ladies. Terrified, the nobles scram, leaving the girls at Frey's mercy. He then walks over to Irina and tells her it's better they have fun in a quieter place. She looks at him straight in the eye and calls him disgusting, wishing that she had hit him instead of the Demon King's army with her ultimate magic. He grins at her like a sadist and tells her to shut up. Then he stretches forth his hands to intimidate her. This makes Irina curse under her breath because she got caught before midnight. As she expects the worst to come upon her, she opens her eyes and sees Frey passed out on the ground. His friend quickly frees herself and tells Irina to escape with her quickly since Frey has passed out drunk. They quickly take their leave, and the friend notes that they are lucky they escaped from him, else they would have faced a very cruel fate. Left alone, Frey opens his eyes and sighs because he could only act recklessly in front of Irina after everyone had left because of the emergency defense skill he had bought, but thanks to him being drunk, he earns more points. By midnight, the emergency defense activates, and the system informs Frey that the Curse of Midnight, which Irina wanted to activate on him, would have resulted in his death the following day by noon. But the skill can only be used once a year, and for that, she remains in a state of mana depletion for a year. Still on the floor, Frey realizes that he was saved, but then Kanya walks in, and once she sees he's drunk, she angrily lifts him up and carries him just like he asked. While backing him and walking home, Frey happily wishes she were always this obedient, and he feels his recent behavior is like a clown, but he uses his situation to raise his vitality. Kanya then coldly tells him he's still a scumbag, and she says that if it weren't for her sister, she would kill him right away. Her cold words cut through Frey as he remembers how close they were in his past life when they were little, and how she was always by his side. But now she tells him to wait for her because as soon as she has ensured her sister's safety, she'll make sure to stop his breath. Later that evening, Kenya arrives at Frey's dormitory and drops him off. While he tries to dismiss her, she boldly states that she will be living with him from now on. Shocked, he asks what she's talking about, and she then answers, telling him that she had received special orders from the Duke. The Duke had instructed her never to take her eyes off him, or she would be expelled. With that being said, Kanya whips out a bed and starts to dress it as she prepares for sleep. While she dresses her bed, Frey goes through the system and is shocked to discover a couple of new rules that have recently been updated and could spell game over for him. Going through them, he discovers that he has no choice but to attend the academy diligently and consistently. He then also discovers that this time, the death of just one of the main heroines will not be overlooked. But the most intriguing rule he finds is the fact that he is not allowed to die in any situation other than the final battle. Frey then spends the rest of the night thinking about the new conditions the game just added. The following morning, when Kanya tries to wake Frey up to get ready for class, he yells at her to leave him alone. To his surprise, she agrees and proceeds to step out, so he's forced to summon her back. In the process of yelling, he suddenly starts coughing blood. He then realizes that he must have given too much vitality the previous day. Kanya tries to find out what's wrong, but Frey downplays it immediately. He then approaches her and begins to lash out at her for trying to leave the room when he hadn't given the order. He roasts her so badly that he likens her loyalty to him to a fountain pen, which shouldn't be able to move on its own. He then threatens to make her little sister his mistress if she has an issue with it. At this point, Kanya is brought to tears, as she pleads on behalf of her sister. Frey then smiles like the villain he is as he walks out of the room. As a result of his villainous act, he gets rewarded 10 points by the system, which also points out that he took the act too far. When he leaves, Kanya notices some blood on his bedsheets, so she wonders if Frey has always had any pre-existing health conditions. Later that day, while Miss Israt Alhambaywork, their teacher, introduces herself to the present students, Frey and Kanya come rushing into the classroom. Seeing how late they've decided to show up, Miss Israt calls them out immediately for the act, subtracting 10 points from each of them. As expected, Frey pins the blame on Kanya, calling her slow. Suddenly, Irina, who happens to be in the same class, notices Frey, and she totally freaks out. Seeing him in perfect condition simply defies the fact that she had risked her life to get close enough to use her magic on him the previous day. After the first period, Felroach, who was also present in class, approaches Frey and asks if he'd like to follow her to a secluded area so she can bless him. Luckily, Frey already got a notification about her murderous intent from the system, so he refuses her offer immediately. She tries to persuade him, claiming her blessings are not the type that can be bought with money, but Frey simply walks out on her. At the venue for the second period, Miss Israt announces that they'll be engaging in combat training. She then orders the students to step forward one by one to duel against her. As expected, she shows off her prowess as the teacher, taking down all the students without breaking a sweat. Eventually, it gets to Kanya's turn and she heads to the ring. When the duel begins, Kanya proves to be different from all the other students as she holds her ground well against the teacher. Yet for some reason, something still feels odd. Kanya is known to be the type to end things quickly to avoid mana depletion, but this time it seems like she's intentionally stretching out the fight. And since there's a limit to how much Frey can share his vitality remotely, it only takes a little time before he starts to get drained from the elongated battle. While Frey feels his vitality getting drained, Kanya takes her time to enjoy the duel with the teacher. After dueling for a while, Miss Iseret remarks that Kanya has by far surpassed her expectations, and that she's looking forward to seeing how long she can last in battle against her. She charges at her to resume battle, but Kanya stops her at that moment. She then explains that she had been born with an unstable mana, and that if she continued the fight, she would lose control in no time. Impressed, Miss Iseret then understands why she has been fighting cautiously from the start. She then remarks that Kanya has the potential to become one of the strongest mages in the land. Frey, on the other hand, is just glad the duel has ended, because if Kanya had dragged it on for longer, there's a high chance that he wouldn't have survived it. Seeing how it'd soon be his turn, Frey gets excited as he puts on a pendant with demonic energy to amplify his strength. Next up, Irina goes up against Miss Iseret, but gets her ass kicked in no time due to the effect of the spell she had used the previous day on Frey. She's then rushed to the infirmary afterwards. When it gets to Felroch's turn, she forfeits the match, as she considers it inappropriate to use her powers on the teacher. It then finally gets to Frey's turn, and our MC grins mischievously while he approaches the stage, as he has already cooked up a villainous plan to help him acquire more points. When he gets there, he tries to agitate Miss Iseret by talking rudely to her, but it only makes her more invested in the battle as she challenges him to make his best effort. With the surge of the demonic energy, Frey attacks the teacher, forcing her into a defensive position to the shock of the students. Regardless, Miss Iseret does her best to hold her ground against him, but it eventually proves pointless as Frey effortlessly knocks her weapon away. Shortly after, Felroch notices something odd and draws everyone's attention to the demonic energy that seems to be coming from the pendant. Immediately, an investigation is done and it's confirmed to be true. Upon the discovery, a pandemonium arises among the students, just like Frey had wanted, and as a result, he gets awarded 2,000 villain points by the system. Miss Iseret, however, is upset about the atrocity Frey just committed, so she summons him to her office immediately. When they get to the office, she interrogates him deeply to find out why he decided to bring a magic artifact into the academy, but Frey simply replies that she's exaggerating and that all he did was bring one item. Miss Iseret then asks Frey what really happened to him, as he wasn't always this nonchalant, and for a brief moment, Frey starts to feel remorseful. But he snaps himself out of it in no time, as he begins to yap about how he had to adapt to a society that holds no regard for emotions. He then boldly states that living honestly is something only fools would do. Surprisingly, Miss Iseret decided to overlook the incident, as it was his first offense. In return, she asks him to take her to the store he bought it from, as she intends to destroy everything. Frey agrees to it, telling her he has some other items he'd like to purchase as well, while he leaves. After he leaves, Miss Iseret wonders just what could have changed him so much in such little time. That evening, when Frey gets back to his dorm, Kanya welcomes him warmly, and as expected, he talks down to her before getting on his bed. He then notices a black cat plushie, which she claims to have gotten from her sister, but he doesn't give it any regard. A few hours later, after Kanya finally falls asleep, Frey heads over and decides to replenish her with enough vitality, which should last her throughout the following day. But little does he know that Kanya had actually shifted her consciousness into the plushie to monitor his actions. Since the time she noticed blood on Frey's sheets, Kanya hasn't been able to shake off the feeling that Frey is trying to keep something from her. So she had used her dark magic to create the plushie earlier, so she could use it to spy on him more conveniently. Seeing him approach her body, Kanya concludes that Frey must be up to something suspicious. She then watches him place his hands on her bare stomach like a pervert, agitating her to the point that she swears to kill him when she gets back into her body. After observing him for a while, she notices that he happens to be in pain while carrying out whatever procedure he's up to, but she doesn't give it much thought. A few moments later, Frey completes the process as he stands up, leaving Kanya shocked, as she thought he had other plans. Suddenly, he turns to the plushie and approaches it to pick it up. At this point, Kanya starts sweating as she believes her cover has been blown. To her surprise, Frey simply picks it up and starts cuddling it like a toddler, revealing a version of himself she never even knew existed. The following morning, Frey wakes up to the sound of Kanya whining. When he asks about it, she reveals that her stomach hurts terribly. Frey then misjudges the situation and yells at her to go to the bathroom, calling her disgusting. Following the event, he gets awarded 200 points from the system for misunderstanding the situation. As a result of the amount of points he's accumulated, the system alerts Frey that he is now leveled up from the beginner stage to the intermediary stage. A store where he can purchase more items then gets unlocked for him as well. Without wasting any time, he browses through the store's contents and starts to make some purchases. In the process, a new notification pops up from the system, alerting him about a new quest where he's required to prevent an upcoming attack in the dormitory. For completing the quest, he'd be awarded the hero's weapon awakening. On the other hand, the penalty for failure would be a massive reduction in his vitality and lifespan. Seeing the quest, Frey concluded that he needed to hurry up and purchase some required items. A few moments later, Miss Iseret arrives at the dormitory, and Frey orders Kanya to answer her knocks. When Kanya answers her, Miss Iseret is shocked to see her in Frey's room. When she asks about it, Kanya reveals that she received permission from the Duke to share a room with Frey, causing her even more shock. She barges in immediately, asking why Frey would agree to something like that, but Frey seizes the opportunity and decides to use it to tease her about still being a virgin, despite her age. His words cut deep, putting the teacher in a petrified state, and as expected, he gets rewarded by the system for it. Kanya immediately tries to explain that nothing happened between her and Frey, but Frey leads the teacher out of the room. They then put on some disguises and head to the store he informed her about. On the way, they come across some nobles oppressing the poor seriously, which makes Miss Iseret sick to her bones. She then makes up her mind that after destroying the store, she'll be sure to take care of the nobles next. Eventually, they get to an old building, which Frey points out as the store, and without wasting any time, Miss Iseret charges in to begin her mission. While waiting for her outside, Frey notices a group of commoners trying to traffic some young girls, so he decides to intervene. Frey overhears the traffickers remarking about the fact that their master would be pleased, so he follows them closely. He then arrives at a brothel where he sees the girls being dragged in. When he tries to enter, he gets stopped by two muscular men who state that the brothel is no place for brats like him. Without wasting time, Frey hands them some money, and the men shamelessly fall to their knees as they pave the way for him. When Frey gets in, he meets a young mistress who shows him a magazine filled with pictures of different women, asking him to select his preferred type. But Frey tells her he'd like to see the real deal before making his decision. The mistress tells him it's not possible as they do not operate in that manner. But Frey had come prepared. He hands her a huge sum of money, taking the mistress by surprise. Seeing the money, her eyes light up immediately, and she then begins to lead him through an underground passage to show him the women. While the mistress leads him, Frey peeks at her stats and is shocked to discover that the woman is a subordinate of the Demon King, the Succubus Queen. Still, he decides to play along so he can achieve his target. Eventually, they get to a shabby dungeon where a lot of beautiful women are being held hostage. When they arrive, the mistress announces that they have a customer trying to force the women to smile. And as expected, the women all put on fake smiles as they welcome Frey, but it's quite glaring that they're all in pain. The mistress asks Frey if the sight is too bizarre for him, but he replies that it's fine. He then tells her he doesn't find any of the women enticing as he's more attracted to younger ladies. The mistress hesitates for a bit, but Frey hands her another bag of money, helping her make her decision instantly. The mistress immediately takes Frey to a corner of the room where it is revealed that there's a hidden passage in the wall. While she tries to open it for him, Frey knocks her aside as he charges in through the passage. The passage then leads him to a dark room where he sees a bunch of kids locked up in a cage with a magic circle next to them. It all then becomes clear to Frey. The Succubus Queen is trying to use the kids as sacrifices to summon the Demon King. Immediately the kids see him, they start crying, calling out to Frey for help. Shortly after, the Succubus Queen, now fully transformed, arrives with her dark soldiers and orders them to capture Frey as he's slowly becoming a hindrance to their grand plan. Frey then puts on a mask to fully hide his identity as he draws his weapon. Then in an instant, he kills all the soldiers with lightning speed, leaving only the Succubus Queen. While he approaches her slowly, she begs for her life, offering to serve him for the rest of her days as long as he spares her. But Frey answers that he doesn't make deals with people who mess with children, as he kills her on the spot. After rescuing the children, Frey hands them some money for food and asks them to go straight home without taking any detours, and they leave. He then gets a notification from the system about his reward for completing a sudden quest. Going through the notification, Frey wonders why the reward he got is quite minimal compared to what he was expecting. He then gets interrupted by one of the kids who has returned to thank him. Looking at the kid, Frey discovers through her stats that she has so much potential to become a powerful sorcerer, so he decides to hand her the reward instead. Accepting the reward, the little girl asks for his name, as she would want to repay him for his kindness someday, but Frey tells her not to worry about it, and that he simply performed his duty as a hero. As he leaves, he instructs the girl to ensure she studies magic so she can become a top-notch sorcerer, and the little girl promises to do so. She then makes up her mind that no matter what, she'd make sure she finds him and repays his kindness someday in the future. Little did Frey know that that brief intervention would eventually lead to a bigger picture, which would later bring about some unimaginable change in his story. When Frey gets back, he sees that Miss Iseret has already destroyed the store. Seeing him, she asks where he went, but he calmly replies that he wandered away for a bit. He then tells her about an auction that would be coming up in the Information Guild in a while. When Miss Iseret learns about the black magic artifact, which is listed to be sold, she lights up and immediately starts pestering for the location of the venue. She then gets her hopes shattered when Frey tells her about a barrier that had been put around the auction house to restrict people without tickets from entering. Luckily, since he has a ticket, he reveals that she'd be able to bypass the restriction as long as she registers as his lover. Hours later, they both head to the venue under the pretense of being a couple. When they settle in, all Frey can think of is getting his hands on the artifact. And since no one else should be aware of the unbelievable features of the stone, he believes it shouldn't be so difficult to obtain. Suddenly, he senses a familiar aura nearby. And when he traces it, to his surprise, he sees Kanya in the auction room, also in a disguise. Shortly after, Klana sits next to him without realizing who he is, causing him even more shock. Like that's not enough, he also finds out that Felroach would also be participating in the auction. Seeing how 3 of the heroines have come for the same item he's after, Frey realizes that their joint objective must be to use the artifact to subjugate him. In a couple of minutes, the artifact gets announced, as well as its undeniable power to suppress its target and control their minds. With that being said, the bid begins at 1 gold. Frey, who knows that owning the artifact is the only way he can complete the main quest, decides to bid 15 gold. He then gets intercepted by Klana, who bids 20 gold immediately after. To their surprise, Felroach suddenly ups the bid to 10,000 gold. Turns out she made a mistake with the number of zeros. At this point, the auctioneer is close to signing off the deal, but luckily for her, Frey bids 11,000 gold. A random wealthy man from the crowd, who suddenly develops an interest in the artifact, then takes Frey by surprise with his bid of 12,000 gold. Not wanting to give up, Frey bids higher, but the man keeps upping his bids as well. After a while, the artifact then gets sold to Frey, who bids as high as 55,000 gold. Immediately, as the deal gets closed, Kanya prepares a powerful dark spell which she intends to use to steal the artifact. Thinking quickly, Frey dashes to the front to secure his property, but gets interrupted by a fire kick from Klana, which sends him flying across the room. Given that Frey is in a disguise, Klana can't recognize him, so she asks who he is. But rather than answering, Frey simply brings it to her attention that almost half of her dress has gotten burnt. Realizing this, Klana gets embarrassed, accusing him of being a pervert. She then gets joined by Felroach, who accuses Frey of being a minion of the Demon King. Without giving him a chance to defend himself, she launches a very powerful attack which naturally should obliterate him. But to her surprise, Frey manages to make it out unscathed. The 2 girls then decide to team up against him to take him down, but before they can take any action, the wealthy man from the audience simply walks past them, causing them both to fall unconscious immediately. He then takes off his disguise, revealing himself to Frey as the great demon Eucharius. Wondering why the Eucharius, the great demon, has decided to reveal himself, Frey asks what he wants. Eucharius then reveals how displeased he is with the fact that Frey got to possess the precious artifact instead of him. He believes he should be the rightful owner of the artifact, as it's the only tool that can help him enhance his powers. Frey then realizes that he was probably the one who took it in his last life as well. Suddenly, he notices Miss Iseret fighting all out against Kanya, which is really odd. Eucharius then reveals that he had casted a spell on Iseret when she tried to attack him. After holding her ground for a while, Kenya eventually gets overpowered by Iseret, who tries to deliver the final blow. At that moment, Frey goes God mode as he draws his sword and decapitates Eucharius in an instant. To his surprise, even though he has defeated the spellcaster, the effect of the spell still lingers, so he's then forced to intervene. Just before Iseret can deliver the finishing blow on Kanya, Frey charges in between and uses his body as a meat shield, sustaining a massive injury on her behalf. Kanya asks who he is and why he's helping her, but Frey ignores her. With his newly sustained injury, he knows he cannot stand a chance against Iseret, so he tries a special attack that immediately wears off the effect of the spell, causing Iseret to pass out immediately. Frey then uses his last energy to charge out of the building and head to his dorm immediately. A few moments later, Klana and Felroach wake up, and are shocked to see the corpse of a demon next to them. Regardless, they tell Kanya about the extermination alliance they formed for Frey, asking if she'd like to join, and as expected, she agrees to it. Klana then suddenly starts scolding Felroach for the mistakes she made in their previous life, which made it easier for Frey to take them down. In the process, Kanya finds a star-shaped brooch that looks quite similar to one Frey owns. Later that evening, when Frey arrives at his dorm, he immediately dresses his wound and puts on some clothes to hide it properly. During the process, he wonders why he had to run into a minion of the Demon King, as well as 3 of the heroines in one night. Shortly after, Kanya arrives, and Frey tries to talk down on her as usual, but she simply ignores him, asking where he was earlier today. Frey rudely answers that he went shopping with Iseret as he heads to his bed. Kanya then reveals that she saw someone who not only looks exactly like him, but also carried his type of sword earlier in the back alley. Frey gets taken by surprise, but he realizes that she doesn't have any concrete evidence, so he decides to keep denying it. Kanya then comes up with an idea. She shows him the brooch she found, telling him he had left it in the dorm before heading out with Iseret earlier. As expected, Frey falls for it as he snatches his brooch from her. Kanya then reveals that she found it in the auction house. Realizing that his cover has been blown, Frey starts to panic. At that moment, she checks his back and notices the bandages, confirming her suspicions. Kanya tries to find out why he saved her, but before Frey can answer, he receives a penalty from the system, reducing his lifespan and vitality greatly, while causing him immense pain. Seeing the young master writhe in pain while coughing blood, Kanya begins to panic. After Frey collapses, Kanya treats him, and finds her action wrong since she could have left him to die. So she makes up her mind to ask him why he helped her, believing she can always kill him after she gets an answer. With that, she uses dark magic on him and peers into his subconscious to learn the truth. That way she'll know everything going on in Frey's mind. When she opens her eyes in his mindscape, she's shocked to see how pure and calm the place is, because it doesn't matter the way Frey has portrayed himself. As she looks around, Kanya sees a little version of Frey nervously welcoming her, so she activates her magic and yells at him to know if he's the master of the subconscious. Then she binds him, believing he's dangerous, and tells him she has used the oath magic on him, so he should swear he answers truthfully. He immediately swears, and Kanya lets him go. She then asks him why Frey helped her, and the little one tells her it's because she's important to Frey. Kanya doesn't understand him, so she asks the boy what he means because Frey had been so cruel to her, but then he tells her that there's a proper explanation for why Frey treats her that way, and he usually sacrifices his life force to help her. Surprised to hear this, Kanya freezes, and judging from her reaction, the boy decides it's better he shows her Frey's true form. So he shows her Frey's true motive, which is to save her and the world at large, and how he has no choice but to be despicable. That's when it dawns on her that the reason Frey fell was because she had found out that he saved her, and this makes her fall to her knees and cry after realizing the truth. The Lord of the Subconscious pacifies her, saying she shouldn't blame herself. After all, he can handle being hated anyways. With that, the mindscape shatters, and Kanya returns to the real world. After a couple of hours, Frey wakes up and sees Kanya sobbing by his side, so he realizes that she must have found out his secret. Since there's no point lying to her, he comes clean, saying that he is bound by a strong oath despite the fact that he wants to save the world. So he'll need to do evil deeds to power up. But if he is discovered doing good deeds, then his lifespan will be shortened. Hearing the truth from his mouth makes Kanya realize why he's been mean to her. Still, Frey tells her he used her for his own deeds, and she should never forgive him because his actions aren't justifiable. She disagrees with him, saying there's a reason. After all, he gave her his life force every night, and he's shocked that she's aware of his deed, so he asks her what she'll do now that he's been discovered. And Kenya tells him she'll continue serving him as always, since she can't rest until she repays him. Frey has guessed she'd say something like that, so he leaves her to do her bidding. Later, at a cat cafe, Princess Klana arranges a meeting with Felroch and Kanya, under the pretext of nobody learning about their plan to get rid of Frey. Since they weren't able to get their hands on the Stone of Domination, their plan is to seize Frey's weakness and restrict his movement. As the two ladies talk about their wishes, Kanya silently thinks about acting as Frey's spy to help him, but then she realizes how powerless she is compared to the strings of fate. So she decides to start by making the small things, and the first on her mind is giving him a proper meal because she wants to see Frey's smile, even though for a short while. Kanya prepares Frey's breakfast, and he not only tells her how delicious the meal is, but how he has always wished to do so for a very long time. Right after, Frey says he's going to give her his life force, but then she worries about him, but he assures her that it's fine and he won't let her die. Left with no choice, she agrees with him but pleads that he doesn't overdo it. She sits and watches him struggle while pouring out his life force, noting that the penalty is taking a toll on his body. Suddenly, Kenya's stomach hurts, and Frey realizes that his star mana and her dark magic mixed, so he absorbs the mixed magic without paying heed to her warning. And after a while, her pain subsides. That's when she notices his left arm has plagued, but then he tells her not to worry about it because it isn't his dominant hand, so it won't be much of a problem. Still, Kanya worries that it'll be difficult to restore his arm. But Frey tells her not to pay no mind to it because it'll be back to normal as soon as everything is over. She looks sad thinking about it, and they prepare for school. Later in class, while Iseret informs the students that their midterm test is a one-on-one match, Frey notes that his condition is terrible, but he has accumulated a lot of points at the academy, and thanks to that, he has acquired all the skill items he could and can now focus on the main quest. Once he accepts the main quest, he is tasked to fight and defeat Arena in the midterm exam. If he wins, he'll get the life charger. However, the quest isn't a compulsory task, so he can go ahead and skip it since it doesn't affect the storyline. He analyzes the quests and notes that nobles who'd lose to Arena would attack the commoner dorm, but he can change the roles based on his choice to win, lose, or escape against Arena. He can choose to avoid the fight and frame someone else as the villain. That way, he'll become the mastermind, or her fights her and either win to earn the reward or lose to her. Looking at the options, Frey chooses the route where he becomes the villain to follow the prophecy. Iseret wraps up the class by instructing the students to properly prepare so they don't fail, and they should pair up and report by the next period. As she dismisses the class, Frey is lost in thought, wondering what to do since Arena stands no chance of beating him. He then goes outside but finds some pesky nobles stomping Arena and her friend for running off when they were Frey's gift offerings. When Frey sees them, he doesn't yell at the nobles, instead he commends them for acting without his command. The female noble happily latches to him as he tells them how he was thinking of Arena. He walks to her and asks her why she ran away, but Arena's friend shoots back, saying she can't act foolishly by staying behind. Frey brushes her aside and asks Arena to accept his deal, whereby the winner of the test gets to have the loser do whatever they want. Her friend immediately speaks up, saying she doesn't trust him, but then Frey reminds her he's speaking to Arena, unless she wants to fight him in the test. Realizing what he means by it, she shuts up, and Arena agrees to fight him. He then promises to give her 1,000 gold if she wins, but if she loses, she'll become his slave. With that, he pulls out an enchanted skull pendant for them to make the death oath, while blatantly saying commoners are used to breaking promises. This surprises the nobles, and gets Irina pissed that she ignores her friend's warning and agrees to the pact. So she takes out her pendant, and once the skulls unite, chains shoot out from them and stab their hearts. Frey then talks big in front of her, and the nobles are amazed by his bravery. He then turns to them and tells them not to lay a hand on the two commoners anymore, and they should follow through like him who refuses to use others. With that out of the way, the nobles won't disturb Irina any longer now that he is paired up with her. The problem now is that he has to lose to her while she's weak from mana depletion, and he knows losing on purpose isn't easy. As he walks off, the system rewards him 500 points for the pact he just made, and it unlocks the new skill store with additional options. Glancing at the new skill, which grants him the ability to transfer mana, Frey realizes that he can just give Irina his mana to fight against her depletion. After purchasing the magic skill transfer skill, noting it'll cover the main mission with Irina, Frey sees he still has some points left, so he wonders if he should use it to purchase another skill. He checks the catalog and sees a skill which can slightly persuade people if he lies, so he buys it, believing it'll help him for a lot of lies he has to tell in the future. He then blatantly calls himself a woman to test it out. But unknown to him, Farachi overhears him, and she's shocked, so she dashes away with the huge misunderstanding. At first, Frey considers chasing after her to correct the notion, but then he leaves her be, noting that there's no harm. At the school training grounds 3 days later, Frey spies on Irina through the bushes and sees her training very hard despite her low mana condition. Her friend tries cautioning her not to push herself, but Irina determines to squeeze out a magic attack which she believes can earn her a victory against Frey. But unknown to her, he is touched just by watching her dedication, and moved to the point of tears. After trying for a while, she successfully creates fireballs, and Frey is impressed at her skill for using such a low mana to conjure flames, so he promises to give her some magic. Unfortunately, the act takes a toll on Irina, so her friend dotes on her and then suggests helping her in a roundabout way because she believes Frey will have something up his sleeve. Upon hearing her, an idea pops into Frey's mind, and he's happy he'll get to execute it through Irina's friend. But then, Irina turns the lady down by saying she wants to win by her own sheer strength, and if they end up working together, then she's no different from Frey. Frustrated by Irina's personality, the friend walks with her back to the dorm and wishes Irina would accept the offer. Frey also wishes for the same thing because it'll be easier for him to carry out his plans that way. Suddenly, a pigeon arrives with a note, and when Frey reads it, he learns it's a letter from Felrocha, who claims to know his secret. In the letter, she orders him to show up at the cathedral, and he calls her a pain in the neck. Later that noon, Frey goes there and struggles with the heavy door. Then he spots Felroch praying with a box nearby. Once she sees him, she bends down to pick something from the box while demanding why he dared deceive her all this while. Confused, he wonders why he hasn't collapsed nor spitting out blood since she claims his true identity has been discovered. But to his surprise, she pulls out a maid dress and tells him that the rumors of him being a woman will stir up the world. Stunned by her claim, he wonders why she's holding a maid outfit, but then she tells him that if he becomes her personal maid, then she'll keep his secret. That's when Frey traces back the cause and realizes that she had believed the misunderstanding, so he calms down and tries walking off, saying she should do whatever she wants. Unfortunately for him, the dense girl refuses to let him go, so she cross-examines him and notes that his body is too flat for his initial claim. Offended, he tells her he's a man, but Felroch doesn't believe. Instead, she asks him to cross-examine her, but he yells at her, calling it a crime. It takes her seconds to process everything, and when she realizes Frey is truly a man, she gets embarrassed, and as she watches him leave, Felroch points out how things could have gone smoothly, and she would prevent him from being killed had he been a woman. Immediately, she reaches for his throat and slams him to the floor, while tearfully telling him that Klana has his weakness and plans to have him executed. Meanwhile, she wanted to save him. Had he had followed her silently, things would have gone well. Now Felroch has no choice but to put an end to his life. As Frey chokes, he sees that Felroch is simply venting her frustration on him, so he pretends he has passed on, and she believes she has killed him. As a result, she calls herself a criminal and promises to join him in the afterlife soon, so she holds out her magically imbued hand and prepares to take her own life. Suddenly, the system warns Frey to protect her once daily from a fatal blow. He immediately yells at her to stop, and she's surprised that he's still alive, so she amps herself with magic and is ready to go at him again, but he clicks the button on his shirt and it plays her confession regarding Klana's plan to kill him. He angrily makes it obvious that he wasn't stupid enough to show up empty-handed, then he walks straight to her and talks about how he has her scheme with the princess to murder him, which means if the public gets to know about it, it would spell trouble for her. As a result, he blackmails her to work for him by putting on the maid outfit she bought and cleaning his room. Despite her tidying the place 5 times, Frey insists she do it one more time. Frustrated, she yells at him, but he plays the recording so she starts sweeping till she eventually falls exasperated and declares that she can't take it anymore. Frey then threatens to have her do a different job like night service, but she tells him she'd rather have the rumors spread than to do something like that. He immediately slaps her, and he's rewarded 500 points for being a trashy master. Right after, he reminds her that she was the one who begged him not to spread the rumors and demanded that she do anything for him. He goes back to his seat and glares at her while saying that she should obey quietly if she doesn't want to see hell. Surprised and irritated by his recent acts, Felrosh yells at him, wondering what made him change from the kind person he used to be. But then he sees her as trying to be pitied. Felrosh then tells him about how he once gave her a potion when she got injured, but Frey doesn't know what she's talking about. Suddenly, a memory flashes into his mind where Felrosh is holding a potion, and he wonders where the memory came from. Felrosh then switches mood and accepts that Frey is all trash. She picks up the broom to continue cleaning, and Frey realizes that all the lingering affection she had for him is all gone. Instead, she only feels negativity towards him. Frey is okay with her attitude because in a few months' time, anyone who shows concerns for him will face penalties. Later that night, Frey returns to his dorm, and Kanya sees he's been drinking, so she asks him why, especially since he's been having nightmares recently. Instead, Frey assures her that he suffered the same consequence in his past life, so he tells her to lie down while he transfers some life energy to her. Kenya quietly obeys him and unbuttons her shirt, but it makes him embarrassed, so he reveals that he doesn't need to touch her stomach, especially to transfer magic. Kanya feels like there's no reason to change it, but when Frey mentions how awkward it is for him to look elsewhere, it dawns on her that he's a boy after all, so she stutters while agreeing with him and lay on his bed. Right after, he imbues her with magic, and while at it, he learns that she entered his subconscious while he was passed out the other day. After learning the truth, Frey is happy, but then he tells her not to push herself. After all, he's done trashy things in his past life. Still, Kenya doesn't change her stance because she knows that in both timelines, Frey risked his life to save her. Later that night, while Frey sleeps, Kanya sees he's having a nightmare, so she vows to help him out, noting that it's the least she can do since she can't save him. She starts by picking up her cat Phil and noting that it's the perfect disguise for her to help Frey out since it's not a human. With that, she starts the ritual and enters into his subconscious. There, Frey wanders around trying to figure out where he is, but just then he sees a black cat which seems awfully familiar to him, so he picks it up and tells it to tag along. Suddenly, he notices fog around him, and when he peers through it, he sees his younger self speaking to little Felrosh. Frey wonders if it's a dream, but he continues observing them. Felrosh, on the other hand, doesn't know him, and she demands to know why he's handing her a potion, but he introduces himself to her and says it's only logical to help someone in need. Felrosh refuses to believe him and takes little Frey as a liar, and this confuses the one watching because he doesn't recount his first meeting with her outside in the slums, and it should have been at the cathedral. Little Frey concludes it's normal to be suspicious, so he tells her he'll leave the potions and she's free to do whatever she wants with them. Curious, she asks him where he's going, and he points to the cathedral, saying he's heading there. As he walks off, he says that although he isn't good, the people in the church should be trustworthy. Felrosh tells him to wait, but little Frey goes otherwise. Now left alone, she notes that he doesn't seem like a bad person, but she doesn't know what he's thinking. As the fog around her lifts, she turns to stone, and Frey concludes it's not just a dream. He recalls when he had slapped her earlier and notes that Felrosh may be an airhead, but she can't lie, and what he just saw matches her explanation. And it is too real to be just a dream. Instead, it's likely something that happened. He gets confused and wonders if someone manipulated his memories. After all, the words made him remember the incident. Suddenly, black fog gathers around him, and he has a bad feeling about it. The next vision he sees is a fatally wounded Felrosh who got tied up and is bleeding not just from her injuries, but also from her eyes and mouth. As he floats in the dark abyss, Frey realizes that he's in a terrible situation, and he starts finding ways to maneuver his way out. Just then, he hears a voice asking him how long he plans on sleeping and urging him to wake up. When he looks up, he's stunned to see the bloodied corpse of Felrosh smiling at him while chained to a log with weapons sticking inside her, and she calls him the criminal who put her through that pain. Frey is trembling in fear, but things get even crazier when the bloody corpse of Klana appears behind him and asks him if he enjoys slaying people. When he notices that a pool of blood has stained his hands, he wonders where the blood came from, but then he sees the scary, bloody, undead versions of Kania and Serena directly in front of him. As he cries for help, the undead Kania asks him if her dying for him as he wished makes him happy, and this makes him beg even more desperately for anyone to come rescue him. However, the undead girls swarm him and drag him into a dark portal. In the real world, Kania bites him in her cat form as she desperately tries to wake him up, but he doesn't wake up, and she realizes that his subconscious is going out of control. As she tries desperately to pull him out or the dark portal, she fears that the young master will be turned into a living corpse just like the girls in his dream. Since her intention is to save him, she has to do something, but realizes that she can't do it properly in a cat's body. As Frey falls into the abyss, a bright light suddenly shines above him, and when he opens his eyes, he notices that he's in another dimension that looks way more heavenly than the last one. As he tries to figure out where he is, he hears a voice saying they made it in time, and this makes him wonder who's speaking to him. Suddenly, a woman appears before him, glowing like a goddess as she expresses her happiness over the fact that she previously imbued his subconscious with power. Frey recognizes her as his mother, and she softly embraces him while telling him that her final gift to him is ensuring that he won't have to be tormented by nightmares for a while. As tears stream down Frey's eyes, she tells him that the path he's chosen is one of thorns and warns him that things won't always go his way. However, she says that when things go sideways, he needs to remember what's truly important to him and what he really wants to protect. In the real world, Kanya wakes up from sleep, and she's immediately worried about the young master. When she jumps up to check on him, she sees that he's completely fine and reading a book like nothing ever happened. She asks if he's okay in the dream, and this makes him realize that she's the cat from the dream. He thanks her for giving him a bit of relief, but she apologizes for not being able to help out even more. He then reveals that he met his mother, the late Duchess in the dream world, and that she told him to remember what he wants to protect when he feels stuck. However, Frey is scared because his memories were manipulated, and he no longer knows who to trust. Even the prophecy book he's relying on could be a complete lie. However, Kanya hugs him from behind and tells him to trust her. As he holds her hand, she admits that he's worked harder than anyone for others, and assures him that even though his memories were manipulated and all his efforts are in vain, she'll never forget his admirable way of life. At that moment, Frey remembers that he chose his path even though he knew it would be difficult because he's determined to protect the people he cares about. As tears roll down his face, he realizes that it isn't the time to feel down because even if he fails, the efforts won't be in vain. A couple of days later, at the academy, Inlet announces that the midterm test is about to begin and instructs the students to come forward in order. As the students step forward, Frey is thankful that nothing has happened since the last clash at the academy because he's finally ready to fight Irina. The system warns him that excessive use of magic transfers through physical touch can deplete magic and cause unconsciousness, but he's confident that he'll be fine because he's upgraded his magic transfer as much as he can and trained with Kanya. As Klana and Felroche prepare to battle, Inlet informs them that forfeiting won't be allowed this time, but Felroche tells her not to worry because she doesn't plan to. She then gathers mana around her body and Klana focuses her magic power on the tip of her pointing finger. Seeing this, Frey realizes that the ladies are plotting something, but he calms himself with the fact that they can't attack him from that distance. As Klana's mana intensifies, Felroche prepares to land a powerful punch. When Klana fires the attack, Felroche jabs it in the direction of Frey. As the attack approaches him, Frey finally realizes that the girls planned to kill him all along, but fortunately, Inlet stops the attack with her sword. She then warns them that they'll be disqualified if the attack on Frey was intentional, so the girls have no choice but to settle their score once and for all. When Felroche tries to punch Klana, she dodges and delivers a flurry of super-fast strikes, which take Felroche to the ground. Seeing this, Inlet declares Klana the winner and calls Frey and Irina to have the next duel. As Frey steps forward, Kanya warns him not to push himself too hard, but he says it is fine because they've already practiced how to lose gracefully. When Irina and Frey arrive at the arena, she starts trash-talking him, but he tells her some bashful words of his own as he prepares to put on an act. While standing across from each other, Frey gathers mana around himself, and Irina prepares to roast him with a flame attack. When Inlet announces the start of their duel, Frey charges at Irina, but she summons 7 fireballs to stop him, a feat which he thought was impossible. However, the fireballs go out as she starts coughing, and he explains that this is the result of her overusing her powers. He decides to stick to his original plan of attack and uses his mana-infused hand to drive her head into the ground. While looking down on her, he calls her a pathetic insect and decides to share part of his magic power with her. As he tortures her with mana, she summons a fireball behind him and successfully blasts him in the back. As he rolls around in pain, she scolds him for hurting a woman and summons a large fireball to end him. However, Frey is confident in the one hit he landed, and suddenly, Irina's brain starts overheating. Suddenly, her fireball vanishes, and she falls to the ground, causing Inlet to remind her that Frey wins if she can't get back up in 10 seconds. As she starts counting down, Frey is worried because he feels he overdid it by pouring all his magic attack into his attack when all he needed was one hit. Irina realizes that she's in trouble because even though her magic power recovers, she still can't get up immediately. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle appears around them, and Frey freaks out as he realizes that it's a teleportation spell. He tries to figure out what's going on, but gets transported to a different location along with Irina. Seeing this, Inlet tells the other students to stay where they are because she couldn't detect the spell before it activated, and there could be other traps in the area. One student from behind reads a piece of paper she found and realizes that it's a recovery scroll. Meanwhile, Frey and Irina appear in a strange forest, and the hero is worried by the fact that his plan failed due to multiple sudden disasters. As he checks on Irina, he's believed by the fact that she's only unconscious and not dead. While sitting on the ground, he realizes that the place they're in is the forest with the most monsters on the continent called the Grey Forest. He wonders if a battered hero and magicless mage can survive in this condition, but then realizes that the cause of their transportation was the girl with the scroll named Ariane. Since there's a low chance she was trying to help with the scroll, he presumes that it's a mix-up, and decided to ask her about it later. As he watches Irina on the ground, he starts to brainstorm about ways to escape the forest, and the inventory system suggests an item called the Mask of Deception, which can hide his identity from people within a distance and even cover his voice. He puts on the mask and feels thankful for the system's correction, because it'll prevent him from being recognized even up close. After waking Irina up, he tells her they need to escape that dangerous place immediately. When she asks what's going on, he lies that she was taken there using a teleportation scroll by Frey and assures her that she's safe while urging her to hurry. However, she's still confused by everything going on, and when she asks who he is, he lies that he's an intelligence agent for the Starlight family who was abandoned in the forest after he fell ill. To add to his story, he claims that Frey brought him there to silence him when he asked to resign, knowing that death is the only way out. Hearing this, Irina concludes that Frey sent her there to die, and a disgusted Frey lies that the sword he's carrying was left behind by a group of adventurers who ran off because they thought he's a ghost. He tells her to follow him to a safe place nearby, claiming that Frey will soon return with reinforcements. But she tells him to wait because she knows something is off about him, even though his story makes sense. Since she knows an ally of Frey would never help her, she thanks him and suggests going alone, pointing out that she's quite capable of protecting herself. Frey warns her that she's being reckless, but she claims that even the 10% magic she has left will be enough to protect herself as long as no high-level monsters show up. Just then, a giant bear appears in front of her, and this makes her freeze in shock as she wonders why a high-level monster that should only be in remote areas is in front of her. As Irina trembles in fear, the giant bear growls loudly while launching its claws at her, but Frey leaps up behind her and delivers a brutal slash which splits the bear in half. Irina is stunned by what she's just witnessed, and he explains that the reason he didn't want her to go alone is because he knows there are dangerous high-level monsters like the bear lurking around. Just then, she alerts him that danger is approaching him from behind, and when he turns back, he sees that a swarm of goblins is charging at them with weapons. This ticks him off, so he grabs her hand and runs away with her. As they race ahead, the goblins chase them fiercely, but they eventually arrive at a safe spot where Irina asks him why there are high-level monsters in that area. He informs her that the forest is home to all kinds of dangerous creatures, and when she notices the blood on his mask, he explains that his chronic illness is acting up since he went overboard during the fight against the bear. Seeing that his mask is covered in blood and he's struggling to breathe, she suggests taking off the mask and tries to do it herself. However, he slaps her hand away before she can make contact and apologizes, claiming that he doesn't want anyone to see his disfigured face. She chooses to believe him, and asks him to wait there while she heads out to find him some fruit while assuring him that she's knowledgeable about things like that. He asks her not to go too far for her own safety, and she then introduces herself, causing him to introduce himself as well with Rihanna as a fake name. She thanks him for saving her twice, but he says it's nothing because he can't abandon someone with a similar fate. As she heads into the forest, she promises to be back in no time, and after she leaves, he takes off his mask to reveal his injured face. Frey is thankful that the monster appeared because he wasn't fully confident that his made-up story will be enough to fool her. But thanks to his heroic act, all her doubts about him were eased out. When he remembers his quest to defeat Irina in a duel, he summons the system to clarify what happened to it, and it informs him that his victory status is still pending, and no penalties will be given because skipping the quest doesn't affect story progression. He suspects that the Academy has put the judgment on hold because of the fact that the students randomly disappeared. Since no penalties were given to him, he decides to put all his efforts into finding a way out of the forest because it's filled with so many dangerous beasts, and one wrong move could cost him his life. After 3 days of traveling the forest together, Irina harvests some crops from the ground while thinking about how she had no choice but to rely on Rihanna since she can't use magic. They forage food, avoid monsters, and other major problems until eventually they reach the area close to the forest entrance. As Irina prepares dinner in a campfire, she realizes that Ariane will be really worried about her and decides to apologize to her when she returns to the academy. Just then, Frey returns carrying a boar he slayed, and this surprises her because she knows he's injured, but he tells her not to worry because there are fewer monsters out there. As he butchers the boar, she asks him if he really plans on staying there, claiming that he can't live there forever, but he says his answer hasn't changed and lies that due to his condition, he's sure that he won't be able to escape Frey if he leaves. She promises to find a way to help him, but he says he doesn't want to be a burden to her, and adds that she wouldn't be able to look after him when Frey comes after his life again. As she frowns, he tells her that living in the forest isn't so bad once a person gets used to it. Since he's been persistent about it for 3 days, she finally admits defeat and agrees to let him stay in the forest. She then hands him some fruit to eat up as an appetizer while the food cooks, and even though she's not comfortable with the idea of leaving the one who saved her behind, she knows he has his reasons. While holding a weirdly shaped fruit, he asks her if it's an ice dragon fruit, but she has no idea what it is. He reveals that it's something he loved eating during his early years, and the fruit has another name he gave to it which is only known by him and a few other people. Suddenly, the entire forest starts shaking and Irina thinks it's an earthquake, but he informs her that it's something much worse. He then reveals that the forest is not only a home for powerful monsters, but also a dumping ground where the Demon King's army disposes all kinds of waste, including modified monsters, failures from chimera experiments, and so many other forms of monstrosities. He assures her that he can't handle all of them except for the Dark Golem, which even packs of monsters can't defeat. As the Dark Golem approaches them, Frey pulls out his sword while telling Irina that he can't fight while protecting someone. As his aura overflows, he points his blade at the beast and tells her to run while he buys her some time. As he stares at her, Frey wonders if he'll be able to handle things as well as he promised. And after the system pop-up screen alerts him that the Dark Golem has an unawakened energy absorption rate of 21%, he realizes that it's the final boss of the latter half of the current scenario because it absorbs the power of its defeated enemies and is later retrieved by the Demon Lord's army. Seeing that the monster hasn't absorbed much energy yet, he assumes that its current combat ability is equivalent to that of an army, and he realizes that he can't use the Mana of Stars because it would reveal his identity. Just then, the Dark Golem's eyes glow as it identifies him as a target, and it scans them while plotting to eliminate them. It initiates its attack by firing a powerful blast directly at them, but Frey manages to protect himself as well as Irina just in time. He tells Irina to run away since there's no time, but she argues that she can't leave him behind. Seeing that his attack failed send them 6 feet under, the Golem plans to continue his pursuit of them, and the masked hero tells Irina that he knows he doesn't have much time left, but wants to spend his last energy to help her because she's the only person that can take revenge on Frey on her behalf. At that moment, she had a flashback of a time when Frey saved her in the same way, and with a radiant smile on her face, she thanked him while promising to never forget this debt. As she runs away, she promises him that she'll definitely slay the sadistic scumbag, and Frey thanks the heavens that his acting skills have gotten much better. As the Dark Golem approaches him with its terrifying aura spilling from its body, Frey feels relieved that Irina has escaped as he charges up his sword with his cold, bright aura as well, and he decides to go all out. Suddenly, alarm bells start ringing in the monster's head as its internal system warns it of an emergency since its target 8, Irina, has escaped. As Frey charges at the beast, he tells it that he's its opponent and slashes one of its legs off, causing it to fall to the ground. While on the ground, the Dark Golem's systems inform it that it's detected a balance system error and it's looking for countermeasures. Since the beast's movements have been sealed, Frey realizes that he needs to destroy the core to defeat it for good. But suddenly, the Dark Golem activates a missile launcher as a countermeasure. As a bunch of missiles fly towards Frey, he realizes that the demons don't know how to hold back, and after powering up his sword with aura, he uses swift, super-fast power slashes to destroy every single one of the missiles. As the Golem persistently fires more missiles, Frey stops to catch his breath, and he realizes that he has to destroy the core real soon, because if the battle drags even longer, it'll be fatal for him. Meanwhile, the Dark Golem updates his target data on the system to a Class 1 high-risk target and executes self-destruct code. As the Dark Golem gathers dark aura, Frey realizes that he and Irina will be in grave danger if it self-destructs, so he rushes forward to find a way to stop it. He then leaps into the air and plants his fully powered sword into the monster, causing a large explosion in the area. As the Golem lies helplessly on the ground, Frey stands with his sword in its chest and his mask breaks as he falls from exhaustion. As blood spills from his mouth, he wonders if the Golem is truly defeated, but then he sees a reconnaissance crow and realizes that the villagers may come to investigate all the noise they made during the battle. He knows that Irina will find out his true identity if the villagers find out he's there, and he tries to avoid that by escaping, but his body can't move anymore. As he falls to the ground, he sees a majestic wizard towering above him with dark magic flowing around them. When he takes a closer look, he sees that the mystery wizard is Kania, who tells him to leave everything to her. While helping him up, she informs him that a carriage is waiting nearby and promises to take him to the dorm without drawing any attention, so he comfortably passes out in her arms. At the dorm, Kania desperately checks on him as he sleeps, and when he wakes up, she informs him that he's been unconscious for 2 whole days. He tells her he's fine but just a little exhausted and asks her to tell him about the current situation. She then reveals that the investigation bureau looked into the cause of his sudden disappearance into the forest, and it turned out that Ariane used a teleportation scroll to save Irina. Frey is surprised by this, but she points out that it's weird that they teleported because it's meant to be a recovery scroll. When he asks if it's an accident, she says the investigators believe it's highly likely and it will only be treated as an accident if they can confirm Ariane's statement. Hearing this, Frey wonders how a coincidence like that can occur, and he realizes that the store could have sold her a counterfeit scroll. He instructs Kania to investigate where the scroll came from, but she informs him that someone else is already on the case. When he asks for Irina's whereabouts, she reveals that Irina has just returned to the academy after being found in a nearby village. This makes him feel relieved since his entire goal was to ensure her safe escape, and when he asks about the match with her, Kania discloses that he was declared the winner the previous day. He feels dissatisfied because he knows losing would have made things easier, but he eventually takes pleasure in the fact that he didn't receive a penalty from the system. However, the quest to fight and defeat Irina still remains on the pop-up screen, so he decides to find a method for that after recovering. He thanks Kanya for her information, but she interrupts him by revealing that it was the Duke that helped them find his location easily. This surprises him because he knows his old man is traveling with Arya, so she explains that his dad immediately rushed to the magic tower after hearing of the incident to inquire about the destination of the scroll. He got his answer, but on his way back he collapsed from stress and still hasn't regained consciousness. Hearing this, Frey is so stunned that he asks Kanya to let him rest on her for a while. After giving her consent, she hugs him tightly as he cries in her arms. A couple of days later, during the weekend, Kenya advises Frey to rest a bit before returning home, but Frey replies that he can't just lie around while his father is bedridden. After wearing his coat, he informs her that he won't stay for long and he also needs to prepare for his main quest. She then informs him that Irina is waiting outside his room, so he asks Kanya to let her in. When Irina enters the room, he starts acting like an oppressive scumbag while asking her if she was truly saved by Rihanna. Even though she's disgusted by his attitude, she goes down on her knees and begs him to free Ariane while promising to be obedient to him. Frey maintains his composure even though he's surprised that she came to negotiate with him directly rather than seek revenge for the incident in the forest. After ordering Kanya to prepare the carriage, he arrogantly tells her that he has no obligation to do what she says since she's his slave. Out of desperation, she promises to do whatever he says, so he gives her the task of finishing what he couldn't in the forest. Despite the humiliation on her face, she accepts his request, but he says he's not interested in someone who's obedient as he walks away and earns 300 points for his despicable acts. He then orders her to clean herself up, claiming that he'll only help her if she does it very well, and she agrees. Outside, Kenya asks what his request was, but he tells her to forget about it for now while promising to give her the full story on the way. As their carriage moves ahead, Frey tells Kenya that Irina begged for Ariane to be set free, and decided that he'll let her go when he gets back because she didn't take advantage of the numerous ways she could have begged or bribed him. He then brings up the fact that Kanya used dark magic in the forest while asking how she's feeling, and she assures him that she's fine because the spell she used didn't need to draw on her life force. He tells her that she's his only support right now, and because of her, he can manage to laugh in this terrible world. But this incident made him realize that he can't go on like this. Because of this, he decides to rely on her strength more seriously from that point onwards, and she agrees to support him because her life belongs to him. He says he wants her to take care of herself so she can act when something happens again, like him losing consciousness or being teleported. He then pulls out a special artifact from the system inventory while telling her that this item along with her sister will surely be of great help. At the Starlight family mansion, Frey's father, Abraham, lies unconscious in bed when Frey arrives and holds his hand while promising to come back once everything is over. As he sits quietly beside his father, he hears a knock on the door, and Kanya enters to ask him if he's sure about his decision. Hearing this, Frey explains that there's no need to stay any longer since he's just a worthless son who dishonors his parents, and if he stays longer, it could cause misunderstandings. He then brings up the fact that the doctors confirmed that his old man's life isn't in danger, and claims that everything will return to normal if they handle things properly. When he suggests heading to his sister's room, Kanya agrees, and when he asks how she's doing, she informs him that she put her to sleep with magic. She then warns him that his sister could be upset to see him, but Frey doesn't mind as he tells her to wait in his room because his conversation with his sister won't take long. When he enters the room, he sees Kanya's sister napping peacefully, and the first thought that enters his mind is that she looks exactly like Kanya, even though her innate abilities are the exact opposite. As he holds the special item, the system informs him that it's called the Potion of Potential, as it can bring out the latent potential of the drinker. Unlike Kania, who sacrifices her life while using black magic, her sister, Kadia's abilities specialize in controlling and suppressing black magic, and since she can control the dark magic of others, Frey feels that the Potion of Potential will be of great use for her. As he feeds her the potion, he thinks about the fact that only part of her ability is awakened due to her young age, and the potion will now allow her to unveil her full abilities. After feeding her, he smiles, because the effects of the potion will manifest within half a day. Just then, his sister, Arya, blasts him with a wave of magic while asking him what he did to Kadia. But he smiles nonchalantly while dodging her attacks. As he sits in the corner, she rushes to check on Kadia while asking what he fed her, presuming that it's an aphrodisiac. She then grabs his shirt while scolding him for doing indecent things despite the fact that he caused their father's collapse, and this makes him feel awful because she's antagonizing him instead of greeting him fondly. Realizing that he has to endure her insults, he slaps her hand away and coldly tells her that their dad collapsed on his own. He then asks what's wrong in using what's his, so she angrily tells him that Kadia isn't a possession. However, he goes even lower as he reminds her that since their father is comatose, he's the family head, and he can do whatever he wants because everything in the mansion belongs to him. He then tells her to leave so he can continue enjoying himself, but she starts begging him to stop while spilling tears from her eyes. While softly pounding on his chest, she begs him to go back to being the kind big brother he used to be, but he smacks her away from him and complains that she's ruining the mood. He then tells her that he'll stop for the day because her crying is irritating him and warns her to stay out of his sight as much as possible. After he leaves the room with his 300 added villain points, Arya cries while wondering what happened to her older brother who used to be the kindest guy around, and he sits outside the door, regretfully asking how they arrived at that point. While lying on his bed, he realizes that dealing with family takes a huge toll on him emotionally, even though he's been doing this faux villain thing for a while. But he decides that he won't be sentimental because anyone who shows concern for him will receive penalties in future events. Just then, Kanya arrives and informs him that the process they carried out had an immense effect. After summoning a ball of dark magic in her hands, she explains that after the treatment, she can now control dark magic and perform large-scale tasks like creating clones. She demonstrates this by creating a clone of Frey, and this makes him happy because he can use this to hide his identity easily. He instructs her to infiltrate the subconscious of dorm residents and send a few clones to keep watch of them. After she leaves to carry out the quest, Frey is relieved because he can now focus on his main quest with peace of mind, and since he has leverage over Irina and the other two girls who hate him, he feels that the quest should proceed smoothly if no major incidents occur. He then remembers the fact that Serena strangely hasn't returned from her trip. Meanwhile, somewhere on the western continent, Serena is exploring the forest with her partner, and the girl says that the paper in Serena's hand looks like the worm-like writing she saw in the ruins. When she asks why Serena suddenly decided to visit the hero's ruins from 1,000 years ago, Serena says she decided to take a shortcut since there's no time. In the paper, the writer states that being chosen as a hero was enough, but they imagine their descendants are facing harsher fates. They then presume that Frey is currently processing his first major quest, and Serena finds this amusing. As she reads the paper, she asks what kind of face Frey will make when he finds out everything and returns home. Outside the mansion, Frey steps into a waiting carriage. From inside the estate, Arya watches him through the window, looking troubled. But after a moment, she sadly draws the curtain closed. As the carriage begins moving, Kenya asks Frey if it's okay for him to leave without seeing Arya, but he calmly replies that meeting her will only bring pain. Kenya falls silent, staring at him with worry as their journey begins. Not long after, Kanya asks about the details of the first main quest so she can assist him properly. Frey immediately recognizes the advantage of sharing the information in case something goes wrong. He then reveals that the first main quest is to capture the culprit behind the attack on the commoner's dormitory. Frey notes that he will become the culprit if he loses the battle against Irina while staring at the system's window, which shows him more details on the quest. Presumably, the reward for defeating Irina in the midterm test is a lifespan measurement device, but the system also reveals that ignoring the quest won't affect the scenario's progress or mete out a penalty. Frey recalls how he was able to clear the quest easily in his past life by committing the incident and turning himself in. While ruminating on how he executed the quest with dubious means and bribing his way out of it, Frey notes that the plan failed, and he didn't get to know the real culprit. Thereafter, Kanya suggests that he stage the incident himself, but he tells her about the potential appearance of another assailant if he follows that route. Kanya then acknowledges the system's guile, and Frey proposes that they search for demons lurking around the commoner's dormitory. Surprised, Kanya asks why they are searching for demons rather than nobles, and Frey explains how demons might have exploited the opportunity to infiltrate the Empire. He describes the Empire's deep corruption and how noble arrogance has already planted resentment among the commoners. From his explanation, Kanya realizes that demons could use this tension to destabilize and eventually seize control of the Empire. Following that, Frey also warns that if he fails the quest, the Demon King's forces will take action, and Kanya immediately suggests finding a way to identify demons disguised as humans. However, Frey claims it will be a walk in the park if they buy a certain item. Later, in the Empire's back alleys, Frey procures some things and claims that they are set. Kanya holds out the demon detector he purchased, asking if it really works, and Frey tells her about the device's limitations. Apparently, it can detect demons below the Demon King and his executives. Frey tells her that the system window will recognize the higher-ranked demons, and Kanya is relieved because the system is unexpectedly being helpful this time, which Frey agrees with. Afterward, Frey asks if she has started investigating Serena, and Kanya reports that she has asked an informant in the back alleys and also intends to mobilize the shadow decoys. Kanya admits she might not be able to find Serena if she's seriously hiding, and Frey agrees, pointing out that Serena is the heir to the family that handles all of the Empire's intelligence and assassination missions. As they continue discussing strategy, Frey notices a group of homeless children nearby. He immediately recognizes them as the same children once captured by the succubus queen. The hungry children lament because they quickly blew through the gold coin they got from a masked guy, since they would have lost it to the adults either way. Seeing their condition, Frey realizes his mistake and decides to build an orphanage since he has more than enough money at his disposal, but Kanya rejects the idea because it will blow his cover. However, Frey shows her the lifespan measurement device he got after defeating Irina and discloses that he has about 4 to 5 years left. He hopes to atone for his sins by saving people like the homeless children, and his words sway Kanya. Flustered but moved, she accepts his suggestion, but with the condition that they do it under her name. Not long after, Kanya distributes bread to the hungry children, while Frey hopes for some world peace. He then remembers that he has to attend the palace ball as his father's representative and decides to drive away anyone who approaches him since he already has a fiancée. Meanwhile, inside Klana's room at the palace, the Empress claims that an alliance between the Moonlight family and the hero would pose a threat to the palace. But Klana realizes that she's after the Starlight family's vast wealth. Before leaving, the Empress tells Klana to marry Frey at all costs and threatens to sell her off if she fails. Shivering in despair, Klana cries and prefers to unalive herself rather than marry Frey. Back at the academy, Frey receives a formal letter from the Emperor, demanding that he annul his current engagement and get engaged to Klana. Petrified, Frey sees that the order is justified by the second vow the first emperor and the previous hero made 1,000 years ago. Kanya wonders why it's so sudden, and Frey remembers reading about this second vow in a prophecy. Before he can think further, 3 female students rush toward him, each of them boldly offering to become his partner for the upcoming palace ball. Watching the commotion unfold, Frey quickly realizes that the rumors about his engagement being annulled have already begun spreading, and someone is clearly manipulating the half-baked rumor. Thankfully, Kanya interrupts the girls and shows them the order from the Emperor. On seeing this, the girls walk off angrily since it rained on their parade, but they don't intend to give up so easily. Frey guesses that the rumor is going to be troublesome, but Kanya believes his engagement with Klana is the main issue. However, Frey is optimistic about the situation because he was also thinking about how to keep his distance when Serena returns. Kanya acknowledges the difficulty of avoiding his fiancée, and Frey decides to use that opportunity to create distance. Meanwhile, at the Academy Library, Klana browses through a book, but it lacks the useful information she needs. After returning the book, she decides to check out the secret archives of the palace. However, she can't access them without her father's permission, and she wonders how she can investigate the second vow. Klana recalls the Empire's founding 1,000 years ago, when her ancestor created the country and received great help from 2 powerful families. The Starlight family defeated the Demon Lord and helped secure public support, while the Moonlight family handled dark dealings behind the scenes. The Emperor granted them extraordinary privileges and refrained from interfering in their decisions. Klana then wonders why the current Emperor ordered the engagement annulment and begins speculating about what that vow truly entails. Her thoughts are interrupted when Frey suddenly appears and asks what she is thinking about so seriously. Startled, Klana glares at him, suspecting he came only to tease her. Unable to continue the farce, Klana excuses herself, but Frey regains her attention after bringing up the rumored love quarrel between their ancestors 1,000 years ago. Klana asks if he knows about the second vow, and he talks about the first emperor's crush on the first hero documented in an old manuscript. According to the document, the first emperor made the vow after losing his position as first consort in hopes that his descendants would not suffer the same fate. Klana says it's ridiculous, but Frey throws her a folded piece of paper and discloses that the other information was encoded. He then turns to leave and casually remarks that he looks forward to seeing her at the ball. Klana asks for his opinion on the forced marriage, but he gives a political reply where his decision doesn't matter, and immediately downplays the power he'd have gained as the head of the Moonlight family. However, Frey promises to give Klana some freedom if she behaves, but she remains silent. Leaving her dejected, Frey hopes she notices the hint and avoids the marriage since the invitation didn't talk about the involved party's right to refuse. Elsewhere, deep in a forest at night, an old crone approaches a small cottage. Inside, Serena welcomes her, but the hag, who happens to be the head of the magic tower of the Sunrise Empire, comments about the absurd nickname Serena uses for her. Not long after, she cuts the chit-chat short and goes straight to business. To the old crone's surprise, Serena wants her memory erased. She inquires further, and Serena reveals that she wants to erase everything from the past month. Shocked, the woman asks for her goal because her body can't handle that much. Despite the risk, Serena insists because she feels like she's about to reveal the hero's true identity, but the woman doesn't understand what she's saying. In addition, Serena also asks her to cast a spell that'll make her obey unconditionally, with Frey as the target of the obedience. While holding out a letter, Serena explains that she has to do it so she doesn't unalive him at the palace ball. At the palace, Klana stands before a mirror to check out her dress, and a maid praises her elegant look before excusing herself. After she leaves, Klana sighs heavily and notes that there are still 6 hours left before the ball begins. While thinking about how to decipher the encryption, she suddenly hears the faint sound of a cat meowing and immediately looks around her room. Soon after, she spots the cat leaving her room and wonders where it came from. Just then, she notices the book it left behind and then picks it up. She opens it, and the book's content leaves her in shock. Later that day, a herald announces Frey's arrival as he enters the ballroom accompanied by Kanya. Frey picks up a glass of wine and asks whether the item was delivered. Kanya confirms the delivery to Klana, and Frey begins to celebrate his impending freedom from the arranged marriage. Kanya reminds him that it's not a done deal yet, but Frey insists it's certain because he has given Klana enough hints and decides to reject it himself if it comes to it. Thereafter, Kanya says her deal with the Empress is what's left to be handled, but Frey doesn't consider it a difficult task. Suddenly, a blonde girl rocking elaborate drill-shaped bangs approaches Frey confidently and requests his attention. However, Frey quickly recognizes her as someone who used to bully Irina and immediately asks what she wants. She sympathizes with him because he's marrying the most untamed princess. She lists the disadvantages of marrying Klana, and Frey even cautions how she speaks about the princess. She introduces herself as an earl's daughter and tells him all the wonderful things she could offer him if he were to marry her. After the pitch, she excuses herself elegantly and walks away. But Kanya is surprised that peculiar people like the noble girl exist. Frey claims it's just frustration, and Kanya realizes the cause since the girl knew her words wouldn't change the royal order. Not long after, Frey tells Kanya it is time for his appointment, and she hopes it goes well. Frey walks past Klana and they ignore each other, but Klana keeps staring at him as he goes. Moments later, a butler leads Frey into a girlish room and informs him that she's on her way. Frey asks about the room's designer, and it happens to be the Empress. As he talks about the Empress's weird taste, she arrives and apologizes for keeping him waiting. She then asks how he feels since he'd be joining the royal family soon, claiming that there is no hindrance in his way. Frey disagrees and asks about a potential backlash from the Moonlight family. From her sly reply, Frey realizes that she solved the issue with money, which is the only thing that moves the Moonlight family, unlike their righteous cause from 1,000 years ago. Frey guesses the arranged marriage with the Moonlight family's daughter is for financial gains and tells the Empress his view on the absurd arrangement, but she rambles on about royalty and its quirks. Without further argument, Frey presents her a formal contract involving a huge donation in exchange for the royalty status. The Empress scans through it and notes the 6 million gold reward, and Frey asks her to sign if there's no issue. The Empress agrees, but notices a clause that prevents his arrest for any crime other than treason. Frey talks about his intention to do dirty work for the royal family once he marries into it, and then hopes the Empress guarantees his protection. Impressed, the Empress believes his words but still asks about another puzzling clause that voids the donation if the engagement is dissolved. Frey claims it's merely a precaution, and she acknowledges it while laughing hysterically. Confident that Klana won't betray them, the Empress agrees to the deal. Shortly after, Frey turns to leave, and the Empress claims she'll handle the rest of the things related to the deal. After leaving the room, Frey thinks about how greed ruins nations but celebrates his successful stunt. Just then, Klana approaches him out of nowhere and coldly assumes he has closed the transaction regarding her. Frey wonders why she's there and lies about the content of his meeting with the Empress. However, Klana doesn't believe him and asks him to wake up from his delusions, which only involves satisfying his selfish needs. She claims things won't go his way and walks past, but apparently, Frey has found a way to avoid the marriage. After Klana leaves, Frey reveals that everything is going as planned and decides to enjoy her rampage from a premium seat. Later that evening, while the other nobles dance elegantly across the ballroom floor in pairs, Frey examines the authenticity of the Emperor's seal on the contract he finalized with the Empress and concludes that no one will suspect him with that in place. Beside him, Kanya observes the gathering crowd before noting Serena's absence, and Frey confirms that she has not appeared. He concludes that the Moonlight family must have refused to attend the ball. Thinking deeply, Kanya agrees with his inference, claiming that the head of the Moonlight family rarely appears at such events, and given the engagement annulment, it's no surprise that Serena wouldn't feel inclined to attend. Frey admits that it's true, but he was expecting her to come under the guise of gathering information to unalive him. Kanya wonders if Serena really intends to end him, remarking how there has been absolutely no movement on her end. Frey agrees and wonders why it seems as if she is observing him rather than coming after his life like everyone else. However, Kanya suggests that they continue to keep their guard up. Just then, the herald announces the arrival of the son of the Empire. Emperor Lycan enters the ballroom accompanied by Empress Rami, and immediately announces the engagement of Klana and Frey. Without much enthusiasm, Emperor Lycan talks about the union's alignment with the first Empress's pledge and leaves the rest to Rami. Taking control of the stage, Rami invites the involved parties to step forward. Instantly, Frey and Klana become the center of attention, and Rami asks for Frey's consent to the engagement. Without hesitation, Frey dramatically drops to one knee, publicly proposing marriage to Klana. Without wasting a second, Rami asks for Klana's consent, but to everyone's surprise, Klana does not consent to the engagement, and Rami's composure falters. Klana declares that she has a say in it and reveals the hidden clause in the second vow, stating that the marriage cannot be formalized without the mutual consent of both parties. Klana turns to her father for confirmation, but he appears taken aback. Seeing the interesting turn of events, Emperor Lycan claims to be under the impression that both parties already agreed to the engagement before the ball. Klana explains how she didn't know about the right to refuse, and Emperor Lycan immediately realizes that Rami manipulated the situation. Unable to overturn the first Empress's pledge, Emperor Lycan declares that the marriage is invalid due to a lack of mutual consent. He then turns to Frey, asking whether he is willing to compromise. Frey performs another theatrical act, appearing reluctant yet composed. After a moment, he accepts the outcome gracefully. Emperor Lycan thanks him for his understanding and apologizes to the guests for the unfortunate disruption before encouraging everyone to enjoy the banquet. Not long after, Raimi quickly confronts Klana and reminds her of the prior plan to sell her off if the marriage fails. Klana, however, stands firm and threatens to expose Raimi's corruption if she dares follow through. Before the argument escalates, Frey approaches and calmly informs Raimi that he will be reclaiming his $6 million donation. Raimi attempts to dissuade him, but Frey reveals he also intends to retain the immunity clause outlined in their contract. At that moment, Raimi realizes she has been completely played and vows to get back at him, but Frey ignores her words as he walks away. While thinking about the unexpected reward of the hassle, he realizes that he is finally free from the burden of a fiancée. By coincidence, he encounters the Earl's daughter from earlier, Isabel, and she subtly attempts to reintroduce herself as a suitable partner. Unfortunately for her, Frey bluntly tells her to get lost. Unable to accept the rejection, she confronts him and bickers back and forth, but he does not entertain the exchange and simply walks away. Moments later, Frey reunites with Kanya and apologizes for keeping her waiting. However, her troubled expression immediately catches his attention and she hands him a letter. While he wonders what could possibly shake her composure, she informs him that Serena left the letter and a message for him not long ago. Frey opens the letter, and to his surprise, Serena asks him to meet her in the courtyard and threatens to kill him if he refuses. Elsewhere, within the Demon Lord's hidden domain, she hands a demon a special pendant designed to conceal its true identity. Excited, she stares at the system window, waiting to see how the hero overcomes the first main quest. On the other hand, Frey arrives at the courtyard and meets with Serena after reading the threatening letter. She greets him casually, but he asks for what she wants and reminds her that they are no longer engaged. He panics as she walks closer to him, but Serena explains why she resorted to threats, knowing fully well that he won't show up without it. Now that they are strangers, Serena decides to help him. However, she claims she does not remember the reason since she lost her memory. He wonders what she's implying, and after teasing him for a while, she reveals that she erased her memories of the previous month with magic. Frey then asks about the culprit, and Serena tells him about how she made the Master of the Magic Tower do it for her. She also briefs him about the Absolute Obedience spell, which is currently binding her to him. Shocked, Frey asks why she did it, and she guesses that it is to help him. She also infers that the memory she erased is related to him, while claiming that she can't remember what she saw at the ruin. Visibly disturbed, Frey wonders if she was able to read the records in the ruin. Apparently, there are ruins tied to the hero across the world, and they house records of the hero's identity and penalties. Since they are written in kana, Frey thought no one would be able to read them. He wonders if she was able to decipher it and concludes that she erased her memory to prevent him from suffering the penalty. With that, Frey acknowledges Serena's ingenuity. She also tells him about her efforts to avoid remembering it so it wouldn't cause him problems. After understanding the situation, Frey inquires about her reason for helping him, and she casually declares her love for him. The declaration leaves Frey speechless, and Serena excuses herself. As she walks away, she tells him to call her if he needs help, and Frey realizes that he has been completely played. He then decides to play along and use Serena's abilities and her family's resources, which are now at his disposal. Along with the legal immunity he received from the contract, he decides to combine them well and clear the first quest without any issues. Elsewhere, the Master of the Magic Tower walks through the alleys, grumbling about how her apprentice made her run errands. Just then, a child named Glare approaches her timidly and offers her bread, but the arrogant hag orders her to get lost. Thereafter, the Tower Master discloses that she came to inspect the enormous amount of magic power she sensed in that area. She tosses Glare a gold coin, and she cheerfully thanks the old woman. Before the Tower Master leaves, Glare claims she can use magic, but the Tower Master is in disbelief because she didn't sense a trace of magic from her. However, Glare releases her magic power, and the Tower Master freezes in disbelief, wondering how the child has such massive magic power. Without hesitation, the Tower Master teleports them to a forest region, scaring the crap out of Glare. After learning Glare's name, the Tower Master declares that she is now her apprentice. Meanwhile, back at the Demon Lord's palace, she complains about being stuck in hiding due to a penalty. Just then, a demonic crow arrives, and the Demon Lord reveals she wants to start making moves. She unveils the plan to utilize the chaos that comes with an attack on the commoner's dormitory to infiltrate the Empire with her army. The demonic crow decides to seek a suitable attacker, and the Demon Lord suggests using a human overflowing with strong negative emotions because black magic works more efficiently on them. The demonic crow accepts the order, and the Demon Lord gives it an item to carry along. At the academy, Kanya meets Frey in his room and asks about what he's doing. He discloses that he is making plans and suggests gathering strength ahead of the impending incident. Kanya quickly understands that he's preparing for the day of the attack and its aftermath, but Frey does not care about the aftermath since he has legal immunity. However, he intends to spread false rumors, earn points, and completely focus on finding the real culprit. While trying to stay optimistic, Kanya wonders what would happen if they can't catch the culprit, and Frey claims it is impossible because the demon detector is a special item that disregards disguises and other magical effects. He then reveals that only the system can counter its ability, but he's the only hero who possesses it. After dismissing Kanya's worries, Serena suddenly barges into his room, and Kanya immediately confronts her for entering without permission. Serena claims she doesn't need it to enter her fiancé's room, but Frey swiftly reminds her of their engagement's annulment. While ignoring his words, Serena looks around his room and concludes that there is nothing suspicious. Frustrated, Frey wonders why she came when he didn't call for her, but Serena wants to know why Kanya is there instead. Kanya replies that she's Frey's butler. Serena narrows her eyes and asks if she wants to harm him, but from her unfazed reply and body language, Serena confirms that she's sincere about serving Frey. Frey thanks Serena for the reassurance and reveals that he needs her help. Before that, he orders her not to be certain about anything related to him, and due to the obedience spell, Serena sheepishly accepts the order. With that, Frey hopes it prevents any penalty from triggering. While recalling the system window showing his path of false villain title, he notes that penalties activate on absolute certainty, as it did when Kanya found out. Following that, he hands Serena a map of the area around the commoner's dormitory and a demon detector. He explains what the device does and informs her about the demon's intention to attack that area. He then orders her to position her family's personnel for surveillance and security, and Serena agrees. She asks why he's now doing good deeds, but Frey insists it is an order and asks her not to pry any further. The obedience spell activates again, and Serena immediately accepts everything he says. Afterwards, she excuses herself and declares her love for him again before leaving. The weird love declaration leaves Frey speechless, and Kanya comments about Serena's unpredictability. Frey agrees but acknowledges her skills and decides to wait patiently for feedback from her. Elsewhere, the Moonlight family's surveillance personnel head out, and Serena receives information that they've been stationed. She inspects the demon detector, which has not responded yet, but her assistant claims they also deployed demon specialists. Serena counts on them, and the assistant swiftly leaves to take her position as well. Thereafter, Serena decides to check out the designated locations on the map that Frey gave her. Meanwhile, the demonic crow watches Serena as she strategizes and concludes that she is not the intended culprit, since it could not sense negative emotions from her. It remembers the Demon Lord's order to find someone capable of casting powerful dark magic to break her restraints. Just then, it notices Isabel, who's still baffled by Frey's rejection, and immediately seizes control of her mind. It then orders her to attack the commoner's dormitory, and she obeys without any resistance. The following morning, Kanya brings coffee to Frey in his room. As he takes a sip, he comments on how peaceful the morning feels compared to recent days. Kanya agrees, pointing out that there have been too many incidents lately. With that, Frey casually asks her to go out with him to buy clothes and share a meal together as a way of making up for the hardship he has put her through. Hearing that, Kanya becomes flustered and wonders if it is supposed to be a date. Before Frey can give more details about the outing, Serena hurriedly barges in and informs him about the suspicious magic energy leaking from the commoner's dormitory while trying to catch her breath. Shocked, Frey immediately suggests postponing their outing. Kanya agrees without complaint, and the three of them head toward the dormitory. When they arrive at the area filled with sinister magic power, the commoner's dormitory assault incident quest reappears. The system window shows Frey the objective, which is to prevent the attack and capture the culprit. In addition, the reward is a hero's weapon awakening and level up, while the penalty of failure is a slight reduction in his life force and lifespan. Frey talks about the overwhelming magic power, and Serena claims it's the reason she pulled her troops back earlier. He then asks for more details, and Serena explains that the surveillance and the detection device failed to pick up anything. However, that morning, evil magic power suddenly started flowing from inside the dormitory. With that, Frey wonders aloud if a noble student entered the dormitory, and Serena asks why he brought it up. Thinking deeply, Frey blames the bad situation on his carelessness because he failed to inform Serena that the culprit might be a noble. He then wonders why the detector did not work, but decides to prioritize the situation and think about it later. Thereafter, Kanya suggests investigation before taking action, but Frey insists that there is no time for it. He decides to barge in and capture the culprit. He takes out the Stone of Dominion and shows it to her. Kanya confirms that the stone is the real deal, and Frey explains why he brought it along as extra insurance. The system window displays information on the stone, and Frey decides to capture the culprit for his dubious plans. Just as he is about to move in, he suddenly grabs Kanya and Serena and hides in the bushes nearby just in time to avoid Irina, Klana, and Felroach's sudden arrival. While hiding in the bushes, Serena asks for a reason, but he shushes her. As the other girls draw closer to the dormitory, Felroach confirms the evil presence there, and Irina claims she noticed it when she went to visit Arya. Irina asks them for help to save the people inside, and they both agree to help. Stealthily watching them, Frey is not surprised that Irina is present since she stays in the dormitory, but he wonders why the other two are with her. He guesses that the three girls have formed a connection without his knowledge and realizes that things are becoming unpredictable. Soon after, Serena demands an explanation because she does not know what to do, and Frey immediately orders Kanya to put up a recognition blocking spell to prevent people from getting closer. Annoyed, Serena swiftly casts the spell and claims that she can also do it. She then asks about his intentions, and he immediately thinks through his plans. Presumably, Frey hopes to find the attacker and use the Stone of Dominion to take over his mind. In addition, he will reveal himself as the mastermind and complete the quest. He further thinks about the uproar it would cause, but he banks on the legal immunity and enough money to easily cover it up. Rather than explaining it to Serena, he orders her to help him without overthinking it as he searches for the source of the magic. Serena obeys, and the trio heads out. As soon as they step into the eerie hallway, Frey hears Kanya's sudden warning and immediately notices the monster charging at him. Unable to react in time, Serena swings into action and blocks the monster's charge attack. She then counters and sends it crashing into the wall. More monsters appear, but Serena easily overwhelms them with her magic, crushing them without difficulty. While watching this one-sided massacre, Frey acknowledges Serena's impressive ability and is thankful that she's on his side. He notices a hexagram graffiti on the ground with a dark aura lingering around it. Serena wonders what the ominous aura is, but Kanya suddenly calls Frey over. She leads him to another room where they find the dorm manager and a maid lying unconscious. Kanya examines them and suggests they were put to sleep with magic. Frey asks her to try entering their subconscious to gather information. Kanya gives it a try, but something blocks her from getting in, and she tells Frey about it. Surprised, Frey wonders how it's possible because Kanya surpasses every other person in subconscious magic, and a complete blocking is impossible no matter how strong the person's will is. He notes that not even the Magic Tower Master, Fel Roach, or anyone in the Demon Lord's army is capable of that feat. After thinking deeply for a moment, a troubling possibility crosses his mind, and he begins to wonder if the Demon Lord is involved. After Frey casually suggests that the Demon Lord might be involved, Kanya freaks out, but he quickly clarifies what he actually meant. He suspects that the high-ranking officers are borrowing the Demon Lord's power. He questions whether the Demon Lord would stoop that low and involve herself in an attack on a commoner's dormitory. After thinking about it briefly, he decides not to overthink things and deal with the problem at hand. At that moment, Serena rushes over, breathing heavily, and gives Frey a report of her scouting assignment. She notices that despite monsters roaming throughout the dormitory, there have been no casualties so far. From that detail alone, she concludes that the attacker is controlling them. She also talks about the hexagram graffiti they saw earlier and claims that it is drawn on all 3 floors in the building. From that observation, she infers that the entire dorm is in a magic circle, and the jaw-dropping news leaves Frey speechless. He immediately recalls the sacrificial magic circle, which uses living humans, which he read about in the prophecy book. However, Frey notes that he has completely forgotten the vague details but still recognizes the graffiti as a subsidiary of the sacrificial magic circle. Thinking back to the incident involving the succubus queen, Frey guesses that there is a separate activation circle, and after a brief moment of calculation he concludes that it is on the top floor along with the culprit. Without wasting time, he decides to go capture the culprit and break the magic circle so the people in the dormitory don't get sacrificed. Meanwhile, on the top floor, Isabel stands in the center of the magic circle and continues to release the sinister magic power. The crow recognizes her as the best host due to her efficiency. Since the strength of the host's negative emotions influences the speed of completion, the crow estimates that it should be done in an hour. However, Frey arrives and immediately understands why Isabel was the perfect prey for them since she resents him. While ranting about it, he launches a magic slash attack at the pair, but the opponents are unscathed. He notes that it's not enough, and the crow claims it won't be easy for him. When the crow notices that Frey has seen through its disguise, it stops pretending and forces Isabel to repel the disturbance. Just as she moves to counterattack, Serena arrives and intercepts her. Along with Kanya, they decide to handle Isabel while Frey takes on the crow. After the roles are decided, Frey approaches the crow and hopes it is not alone. Sensing that it is at a disadvantage in direct combat, the crow chooses a different strategy and attempts to seize control of Frey's mind. Frey, however, has been waiting for this. He immediately takes out the Stone of Dominion and declares that the outcome has already been decided. The crow recognizes the artifact, but before it can resist, it loses its consciousness. It falls lifelessly to the ground, and at the same time Isabel collapses as well, proving that the brainwashing wears off once the controller loses consciousness. Kanya and Serena sigh in relief, grateful that the confrontation ended quickly. They also comment on how overwhelming the raw power behind the opponent's simple attacks was. However, before Frey can begin dismantling the magic circle, Irina, Klana, and Felroch suddenly arrive on the top floor. They immediately question what he is doing there. Klana guesses that he is the culprit, and the other ladies agree with her. Shocked, Frey realizes that everything was moving too smoothly to be true and wonders why they appeared at such a critical time. Klana also demands Kanya and Serena's reasons for being there. Caught off guard, Kanya cannot openly defend Frey without exposing too much. In order to avoid suspicion, she abruptly shifts her stance and aligns herself with the other girls. Serena tries to paint Frey as a good guy, but she strangely forgets why he was there in the first place. Frey sees that overthinking strains the girls' bodies, and he decides to change the situation before they start asking strange questions. He looks at the quest details on the system window and concludes that he would still clear the quest if he escapes and later turns himself in, but he is more concerned about the sacrificial magic circle. After assessing the situation, Frey concludes that he is the only one capable of safely disabling the circle because a single mistake could later become a massive disaster. Unable to reuse the Stone of Dominion since it can only be used once daily, he chooses to trigger its Berserk mode ability. The moment he activates it, a strange aura spreads throughout the entire dormitory. The surrounding girls immediately sense something is wrong and question his actions. Irina suddenly realizes what is happening and declares that Frey is summoning the monsters toward them. At that moment, the crow perches on Frey's head while he thinks about the forced Berserk mode, which temporarily confuses beings lacking self-awareness. A horde of monsters assembles, and Frey deliberately acts as though he is under the crow's control. He plans to secretly dismantle the magic circle while the girls are distracted by the monsters. While pretending to be under control, Frey raises his head and coldly orders the girls to become offerings for the Demon Lord. Klana claims he is finally revealing his true nature, but Kanya quickly suggests that he is not being the devious and insidious villain he usually is. Internally, Frey is grateful for Kanya's assistance and continues with the act. Suddenly, the crow on Frey's head declares that he is completely under its control, and Kanya immediately supports that claim, suggesting that he has been possessed. Felroach also recognizes the overwhelming evil presence, and Klana, still cautious, proposes that they settle the truth after subduing him first. Frey silently appreciates the turn of events and decides to discreetly break the circle while keeping the girls busy. Not long after, the monsters overwhelm them with numbers, and Klana suggests attacking Frey directly. Kanya quickly turns down the idea because of the unpredictable magic circle. Klana then proposes that they break the magic circle, but Irina rejects the suggestion because carelessly trying to break it might cause bigger problems. Running out of options, Klana decides to restrain Frey together with Felroach, while the others handle the monsters. The two charge at Frey, who parries Klana's magic shots, blocks Felroach's fist attack and sends her sliding backwards. Frey confirms that they didn't tamper with the magic circle since it can explode if handled the wrong way. However, even if he alone knows how to break the circle, he still needs them to attack from a distance. Out of nowhere, Frey blocks a sudden magic attack and realizes that it had the perfect angle and force to help him subtly break the circle. Seeing that it's Serena, he notes that it's not as strong as her attack power. Without knowing the details, Serena whispers her intention to play along, and he discovers that she knows he is sane. He acknowledges her sharp mind and decides to continue the act since she has made things easier for him. Frey keeps blocking the incessant magic attacks and thinks about the only way to erase the magic circle without any side effects. Apparently, he has to mix opposite magic attributes with those of the demons to neutralize them before activating the spell. After a while, he achieves the goal and notes that the circle would disappear on its own once it is activated. With that, Frey taunts the girls using the crow, and after taking out most of the monsters, Serena joins them to attack Frey. Meanwhile, Irina watches the whole ordeal from behind, looking nervous and unsure. Moments later, Frey vomits blood and drops to a knee while the crow falls to the ground. Seeing him unable to move, Klana and Felroach come closer. Felroach suggests keeping their guard up, but Klana prides herself in close combat, claiming that she is faster. As she loads up a magic shot to take him out, Frey thinks about the spell he's about to use, which would leave him bedridden for days. He decides to trust Kanya to handle the rest, and instantly mocks Klana's claim that she is faster than him. To her surprise, Frey activates the magic circle and declares that they will all become offerings to the Demon Lord. Klana tries to talk him out of it, but he still proceeds with it. After the magic circle's failed activation, the girls see that they are unscathed and wonder what happened. After some deliberations, Serena inspects the site and concludes that the spell failed after going out of control. Kanya appreciates Frey's efforts in her mind and decides to handle the rest. She hurriedly checks if he is okay and informs the others that he fainted after failing. She then suggests that they capture him before he awakens. Felrocha and Klana admit they thought it was the end for them, but still wonder why it failed, listing out possible reasons why it did. Visibly disturbed, Irina watches it unfold while Kanya makes plans to get Frey to the hospital. Following that, Serena hugs him tightly and begs him to wake up. However, the girls suddenly feel a chilling sensation running down their spines, and Kanya wonders who noticed. As the battle against the supposedly demon-possessed Frey unfolds, Irina's thoughts drift back to her first encounter with Rihanna in the Grey Forest. She recalls the masked guy's rushed tone and how he never revealed his face because of an illness. Surprisingly, he also knew about the ice dragon fruit, which only she and Frey know about. Back then, she briefly thought Rihanna was Frey, but she dismissed the idea because, unlike Rihanna, Frey would never help her. However, the more she watches Frey's moves, the more he reminds her of Rihanna. While the others focus on subduing Frey, Irina notices the glowing mana that is consistently weakening the magic circle. The moment Frey activates the magic circle, a blinding light shines, and after it fades out, she sees that he is unconscious while the girls are fine. As the others speculate on the possible reasons for the activation's failure, it dawns on Irina that Frey canceled out the magic circle's power with his own magic, and the others didn't notice because they were panicking. Seeing that only she noticed, Irina concludes in her mind that Frey stopped the magic circle's activation and saved everyone. Still, Irina wonders why someone like Frey would do such a thing, and guesses that he might really be Rihanna. While she wonders why he hid his identity from her, Serena suddenly screams. It snaps Irina out of her thoughts, and she wonders why Frey is coughing up blood. At the Demon Lord's castle, she notices that the crow has stopped responding. At the same time, a system window appears before her, displaying the quest's failure. Upon seeing the failure penalties window, she realizes that she can't leave her castle. She decides to take the first quest as a warm-up and wonders how long she will be holed up in the castle. Annoyed, she complains about the unknown entity that forced her to prioritize the system's commands and personally fight the hero. It is her movement that is being restricted, not his. The system responds coldly, stating that without restrictions, the hero would not stand a chance against her. After more complaints, the system unlocks the ability to use a duplicate, whereby the user can transfer consciousness to a duplicate and roam freely while the original body remains sealed in the castle. The Demon Lord accepts the offer, but the output of the duplicate will be about 10% of her power daily. She activates the ability and claims it is still unfair, but the system explains how it is also unfair to the hero. Ignoring the handicap, she believes the result would be the same, and her duplicate walks out of the castle. Upon seeing the outside world, the Demon Lord is hyped and declares that the hero is done for. Meanwhile, in Frey's subconsciousness, his memories break apart, and he notices that his consciousness is fading. However, he wakes up in a forest and wonders what is going on since he was just in the commoner's dormitory. He looks around and notices some similarities with the place he was in Felroche. He thinks it through and guesses that he has been thrown into another part of his own memories again. He hopes nothing horrible happens this time. Surprisingly, he hears the voice of a child calling for his mother and traces it. To his surprise, he sees his younger self and immediately remembers the time he and his mom got lost in the mountains behind the mansion. However, his mom is nowhere to be found this time. Coincidentally, Frey spots a werewolf lurking in the shadows but does not remember encountering such a menacing monster. The monster sneaks up on younger Frey, who is busy calling out to his mom, and charges at him with killing intent. Frey watches from his hiding spot and notes that at this rate, his younger self would become the werewolf's next meal. Suddenly, a flame spell hits the werewolf, and just then, little Frey realizes he was almost attacked. He watches the werewolf scram, and then Irina shows up, saying she's finally found him. She asks him what he's doing out in the woods, but he jumps to hug her, thanking her for saving him. The tsundere tries to put him in his place by reminding him that she hates nobles, and she ends up bickering. The older Frey watches the memory and notes he doesn't remember meeting Irina in such a place because back then he had met her by chance while she was working as a bounty hunter. Then sometime later he got lost with his mother in the forest behind the mountain, and he never encountered Irina nor the werewolf. Trouble did happen, but his father found them, and they made it home safely. Frey recalls a similar situation with Furlock and concludes he isn't seeing an ordinary illusion, but most likely his manipulated memory. While scrambling for thoughts, his head suffers heavily as he doesn't know what's real or not. Meanwhile, little Irina informs Frey to leave with her so that she can collect her money from the Duke, but he tells her that his mom told him not to move from that spot. Confused, Irina informs him that the Duke is looking for him and his mom should be at home with the Duke. Realizing that she's home, he follows her, and this confuses the older Frey, who simply makes up his mind to follow them. As they walk through the forest late in the night, Irina learns that Frey has been stuck there for about 3 hours. At first she wonders how he could pull off the feat in a place crawling with beasts, but then it doesn't click with her since she recalls getting the request from 2 days ago. He asks her for more info, but she brushes him off, saying it doesn't have anything to do with her. As the boy trails behind her, he notes that he can't remember why he was hiding there, but he knew he was playing hide-and-seek with his mom before getting separated in the forest. As he keeps asking Irina, she flares up at him and suggests his mother might have tampered with his memory. Not too far off, they hear a howl, and Frey gets terrified, but Irina calms him down by revealing she can handle a whole pack. Unfortunately, a werewolf shows up right in front of them, and from its size, she realizes it wasn't the one she had smoked earlier. Frey trembles, and he asks her what they should do. But then she tells him to run. Just then, the werewolf grabs her like a snack and squeezes her in his fingers. And Frey refuses to back down, so he goes smacking the monster, saying that he isn't going to leave his friend behind. Despite being in pain, Irina yells at him for not running off, but just then, the werewolf faces him and sniffs him. The boy freezes in fear while noting that he has to fight, and the older Frey is surprised that the monster isn't attacking. What surprises him is that the more he looks at the werewolf, the more familiar it gets. But he shouldn't know any werewolves. As he tries to recall, he has a sharp pain. Suddenly, Irina fires a flame ball at the monster and it pisses it off, so it kicks Frey, slamming him into a nearby tree. She yells out of concern, but the werewolf pummels her into the ground and rains multiple hits. At this point, Irina wonders if she's going to die in such a place. But suddenly, a huge star attack strikes the creature on the head and causes it to bleed. To Irina's surprise, she sees Frey on his feet, holding a stick and telling her to hang on, vowing he'll save her. Frey leaps at the werewolf and the creature tries to attack him, but suddenly withdraws its fist, and in that moment, the boy stabs its torso, causing it to bleed and fall to the ground. With it out of the way, Irina gets up and is shocked at Frey's power, so she asks him why he didn't use it sooner if he always had that kind of ability. But then he passes out and she realizes that he has used up all his magic at once. Scared, she calls out to him and tries waking him up. The older Frey who watched the entire fight is confused, as he wonders why the werewolf froze after raising its fist. He notes that the headache was strange, so something's off also. There was no way such an attack could work on a monster of that level. With the way everything played out, Frey concludes that the reason the attack had landed was that the werewolf lost the will to fight, and that means it knows him, for it not to attack him in the berserk state. The memory stops, and dark fog starts to appear, and it gets Frey worried. A week later in Klana's dormitory, Klana shows up and asks Ferlosh about him, but she says he's still unconscious despite nothing physically wrong with him. Klana finds it strange and tells Ferlosh that they'll do what they can by spreading the rumor that Frey was behind the incident. Ferlosh worries a bit because they aren't sure if it's true, but Klana tells her they don't have time to be cautious, and if they want to take him down, they have the chance while he's unconscious. Ferlosh agrees with her but then notes that a saint shouldn't lie. Klana, who is eager to get rid of Frey, says they shouldn't hesitate, so she suggests they make people suspicious of him since they don't have solid proof. After all, he infiltrated the dorm, and they saw him help the Demon King's army. She plans to use what she saw to make people suspect him of having a connection with the Demon King, to put his position in jeopardy. Ferlosh, who can't keep up with Klana's conversation, chooses to follow her lead. Suddenly a guard shows up and informs them that Isabel has regained consciousness. Klana immediately chooses to go there to find out why she was at the commoner's dorm, believing it'll work in their favor. She leaves the rest to the guard and walks off with Ferlosh. But shortly after, the Demon King shows up, asking the guard if she can come in, but he refuses, so she uses magic to compel him into agreeing. She goes straight to her dead crow and tries using magic to trace its consciousness to uncover the hero's true identity. After giving it a try, she sees Frey's face through the bird's memories and learns he's the hero. With that, she creates a magic spell and gets rid of the bird, while noting that since she has identified her target, all that's left for her is to crush him. 3 months later, Frey still hasn't woken up, and Selena, who is worried sick, asks Kanya what is going on. She believes Kanya knows something about it and suspects Frey has a chronic condition that Kanya is hiding from her. Kanya feigns ignorance and it pisses Selena off, so she vows to use her own method to get to the truth of the matter. Just then, Irina shows up to clean, but Selena tells her to do it later since they are in the middle of a serious discussion. Unfortunately, Irina refuses and reveals she has sworn a death pact whereby if she doesn't complete her task on time, she will die. Realizing how troublesome her case is, Selena leaves her to clean while she goes outside with Kanya to continue their conversation. Right after they leave, Irina sees it as her chance to investigate, but to her surprise, Frey coughs and opens his eyes, so he anxiously checks up on him, and it leaves him confused. So he asks Irina why she's there and how long he's been unconscious. There, she regretfully reveals he's been out for about 3 months, and he's surprised because it didn't feel that long in his subconscious. He checks his system and sees it's a penalty whereby his lifespan has been significantly reduced. Worried, he wonders who noticed him, and as he cross-examines the other heroines, remembering that Selena has lost her memories, he wonders how one of them could, since they don't know him well enough to recognize his act. But that was when he recalls using his abilities, which he has always avoided showing to others right in front of Irina. And that was the same thing he did back then in the Grey Forest. Irina nervously informs him that she'll go and call a doctor, but then he concludes that she has realized his true identity. While watching her, Frey wonders if he should press her for answers, but then he changes his mind, believing he can cause unnecessary trouble for himself if his deduction is false. So it's best he watches her to confirm it first. Immediately, the girls get the news. Kanya and Selena dash into the room to check up on him. He then orders them to leave, saying he wants to talk to Kanya alone. Surprised at Selena's reaction, Irina follows awkwardly behind her till they slam the door shut. Right after, Frey asks Kanya if she has any idea of who found his identity, but she shakes her head and tells him that everyone is acting the same. He then tells her that he suspects Irina. Confused, Kanya asks him why, so Frey reveals that she saw him fighting in the forest, and even though he had tried his best to suppress his habits back then, it must have been noticeable. Kanya then assures him she'll look into it. But before she leaves, Frey asks her to prepare him a meal because he's hungry, so she obeys. Suddenly, his system window pops up and informs him that an enemy has realized his true identity. As a result, they have gained a beneficial effect. At first, Frey panics inwardly due to how difficult his tasks have been getting lately. But then, he calms himself, believing it's just the usuals. He recounts his experience so far with the system and heroines and concludes that the system is full of irregularities. Also, deceiving the heroines is much harder than he had expected. He glances at the cat doll and notes that no matter how much he tries to avoid them, he keeps ending up in situations where he has to get involved. Thankfully, he has Kanya on his side, and it's thanks to her that he hasn't died yet. As she prepares his meal, she vows to ensure his lifespan isn't shortened any longer. Irina, on the other hand, wonders why Frey is hiding his identity and thinks about asking him directly. But then she considers a slight chance that she's mistaken, so she chooses to watch him to see if he's truly rotten. Frey too, who has no idea what Irina is thinking, leaves everything to Kanya to investigate before he makes a move. Klana, on the other hand, antagonizes Frey with her soul, and she reports him to the Empress, wanting them to arrest him. But since he has outplayed them earlier by having them sign the contract, she tells Klana that the Emperor's wish can't be overturned easily. Klana speaks badly to her before storming off. When she meets her guard, he apologizes to her for the lack of evidence, but she tells him it's fine and all they need to do is frame Frey as the Demon Lord's accomplice to get him executed. Ferlosh, on the other hand, who is so simple-minded, makes her easy to manipulate. At the cathedral, she notes that she's done playing the fool and would like to start making her moves, because the red-haired demon should be at it too. Frey believes that no matter how unpredictable Ferlosh acts, he has Selena, who is on his side. Unknown to him, the beauty who picks some flowers in the garden receives a letter by an owl from the Magic Master. Once she opens the letter, her memory is restored, thereby fulfilling the contract she made with the old woman. With her memories recovered, Selena wonders if she should tinker with the system a bit. Frey believes he can order her freely with no risk of penalties. He makes up his mind to see things through despite the tough road ahead, and he vows to protect the world where everyone belongs. Meanwhile, in a cave elsewhere, a cloaked figure steps into a dragon lair, and the dragon questions their authority, only for them to reveal their identity, and the monster is shocked to see the Demon Lord. She corrects it by saying that she's in an avatar, then she orders the dragon to summon her army. The monster realizes that the war is beginning, and the Demon Lord tells it it's time to put an end to the hero once and for all. Manaka Issei is the hero who saved the world 1,000 years ago, and Frey Rayon Starlight is his descendant, the next hero, following the system and prophecy to unlock the hidden route. After doing all that and being tasked to save the world while being a false villain, he finally clears the dormitory mission, and it's time to begin the main quest. A few hours later, he suffers from the third penalty stack while fighting the Imperial Skull Knights. A few hours earlier, Frey casually lazes around in the Sun God Order, and Ferlosh yells at him to assist her, but he tells her that he gets distracted by the face she's making. What got Frey into this situation was the rumors of him being the mastermind of the dormitory incident. Once people heard he was associated with the Demon Lord army, they pressed charges, but the Imperial family and the Order desperately defended him, and to save face, they decided to punish him by having him assist with the preparations for the Sun God Order Orphanage Festival under Ferlosh's supervision. However, since he can't perform good deeds while playing the role of the false villain, he's slacking off as much as he can. Still, she's too harsh on him and follows him around to the point that he asks her if it's okay for her to just watch him, since she should have a lot on her plate. Annoyed, she tells him that it's because he might do something again, and he's surprised at how low she thinks of him. For him to commit a crime after waking up from a 3-month coma, he needs to have a plan. Despite telling her that, she tells him that she's sure he's involved in what's happening at the Order's basement. When he asks her what she means by this, she shuts up after realizing he knows nothing about it, so she tells him to forget about it. It piques Frey's interest, and he gets an important event notification, telling him to uncover the conspiracy with Ferlosh and thwart the evil plans swirling in the basement of the Sun God Order. If he succeeds, he gets the hero's armament and awakens, albeit slightly, but if he fails, Ferlosh dies. Shocked about the event, Frey notes that he never came across such in the prophecy book, so he thinks about it and notes that it's an unavoidable quest. Immediately, he acts like he's aware of the basement, and Ferlosh believes him, before asking him what he plans to do, so he baits her by telling her to see it with her own eyes if she wants to know. Meanwhile, someone else listens in on their conversation, and they aren't aware. Moments later, they head to the basement, and Ferlosh is surprised that such a place exists. Frey notes that the place seems old, and he's surprised that it's Ferlosh's first time being there. She then tells him that it's not her fault because she did try to investigate the place to know what's there. But when she approached the door, the guards turned her away by telling her there's no need to check it out, since it's where illegal items are stored. Upon hearing her, Frey concludes the security is thin because of the festival, and they are lucky they have access inside. Ferlosh energetically wishes to wrap up the case so she can expose the Demon Lord army, but carelessly saying that makes Frey quietly question her senses. He suddenly spots a broken slab with Kana writing on it about the god's lore. Surprised, he wonders why it exists in their world, and notes that it mentions the Sun God, the Moon God, and the Star God. Ferlosh surprises him by informing him that she has seen the characters before, and back then, they were on stone tablets on the Western continent. She admits that she tried deciphering them, but she gave up along the way. Frey thinks about going there, believing he might get the information he's looking for. After walking for a while, they see a lot of troublesome magic seals on a door ahead, and Frey notes that even 10 men working together might not be able to break them. But Ferlosh surprises him by crashing the spells and the door with her fist, and this makes him deny saying anything earlier. Once inside, they notice how the place is far more spacious than the corridor, but what catches their eye are the undead army that were lying in wait. Shocked, Ferlosh wonders how such evil presences are directly under the church's hall, but Frey says the army emanates an aura mixed with sunlight and black magic. Therefore, they are paladin undead made from paladin corpses, but then he wonders why a lot of them were made. And that's when Furlough shows him the huge sacrificial magic circle directly above them, and they realize it's far larger than the one they saw at the commoner dormitory. There, it dawns on Frey what the presence of the undead and a sacrificial circle above means. So he laughs like a true villain and asks Furlough if her question has been answered. He makes fun of her for following him into the basement, especially now that she's defenseless, and that's when she remembers she's been suspecting him, so she tells him that if it comes to the worst, she'll use the sun god's protection. Unfortunately for her, Frey reminds her that she can only use it once a day, and it's what she used to break the door earlier. Now that he's in control, he decides to tell her the plan. Firstly, by asking her what's directly above the magic circle, and when she thinks about it, she realizes it's the sun god's order's orphanage. So, Frey boasts, saying that if he triggers it to coincide with the peak of the festival, the humans above will become an offering to the Demon King. Realizing the plan, Furlough calls him a monster and storms away, saying she won't let him do that, but he tells her to hurry or else anyone left behind will become the Demon King's food. Immediately after she leaves the room, he sighs, noting that Furlough is capable of ensuring everyone escapes no matter what. He walks to the approaching army, noting that it'll be a tough fight, and says it's the only way to save everyone while playing the scum. Some archers shoot arrows at him, but he dices them, noting that now that no one is watching, he can fight like a hero for the first time in a while. He slashes at the skull soldiers, but they keep coming back no matter how many times, and he realizes he's at a disadvantage, especially with the 2-stack penalty the system rewarded him. So he releases his mana and says he has to pick up the speed. As he continues the onslaught, Irina observes him not too far off, and she concludes that her hunch wasn't wrong because about a month ago she went to Grey Forest and noticed a rock with the same stellar mana as Frey's, so she concludes Rihanna was truly Frey. But she doesn't understand the sense behind it since Frey was cruel to her, and she wondered why he would curse her and still protect her. She wants to know his goal, and as she's observed lately, Frey only commits evil deeds in front of others, so she wonders who he is. Frey continues his fight, but his speed goes down. While at it, he notes that it'll be dangerous for his health to drag the fight on for long. After demolishing a lot of them, he sees 2 gigantic skeletal mages casting spells behind the forces and then realizes that they are activating the sacrificial spell. Noticing that they are speeding up the process, Frey charges ahead, fighting the skull soldiers to clear a path to the mages. But just then he hits his limits and starts bleeding. Still, he perseveres by leaping into the air and breaking the arms of the skeletal mages. With that, the spell stops and it vanishes, so Frey, who is beyond his limit, concludes that the orphanage is safe. Then he falls to the ground, even though the skull soldiers are still active. They walk to him and try to stab him, but Irina casts fireballs on them, before closing the gap and protecting Frey. She then lifts him and tries waking him up, but sees that he's passed out, so she tries taking him away, but he's too heavy. To her surprise, the skeletons show up unfazed by her magic, and she curses because it was the last of her attack scrolls she used. But then she checks her pocket and sees an extra. Then she remembers her shady dealer throwing her a freebie for purchasing lots of fire magic scrolls. Immediately, Irina opens the seal to use the magic on the skeletons, but then a teleportation circle appears beneath her feet, and she realizes what kind of scroll she was given. Before the skeletons can reach them, they are teleported to the forest, and they crash into a tree. Hurt, she examines herself and then sees that Frey is alive, so she checks the used scroll and says she'll complain to the shop later for mixing the 2 items. She then examines the forest and notes that it isn't gray, and to her surprise, she sees the secret base Frey built when they were kids. With that, she concludes that they are in a nearby forest close to the Starlight Estate. She examines the base and then notes that she'll have no choice but to ask Frey directly. So she pours him a potion. The next morning at the base, Frey wakes up to a splitting headache and he sees Kanya right in front of him, or so he thought. She tells him she saved him, and he thanks her, but hasn't noticed that she's Irina, who used a spell to appear as Kanya to him. She cooks up a lame excuse as to why she was in the basement at that time, but then he asks her where they are and says it feels familiar. He tries talking about it, but Irina, who doesn't want to be seen through, tells him she has prepared something simple for him, and she offers him fruits with cooked fish. Frey looks at it and notes that it's quite extravagant for Kanya to prepare, so he looks around before telling her that the berries look familiar. He grabs the ice dragon berry and talks about how nostalgic it was. This time around, he says he can't remember the name, so he asks her what he named them when they were little, and she tells him but doesn't know he has seen through her disguise. Curious, she asks him to tell her in detail what had happened, so he starts by narrating the entire ordeal of how he had to play the false hero, and by nightfall, he concludes the matter. The real Kanya wouldn't need such an explanation since he has briefed her before, but Irina, who just learned of it, struggles to process it, so she heads outside to get some fresh air. After she leaves, Frey smiles and says he once told her that she sucks at acting. At a pond, Irina struggles to process what she just learned, and she realizes that she was hindering him all this time. Still, she can't forget the fact that he killed her in her past life. As she wonders what to do, he throws her a mana ball, and she instinctively uses her flames to offset it. While holding her flames, she asks who's there, But then Frey comes out, saying he's found her, and he calls her Irina. With that, she undoes her disguise while saying she should have realized his mana. Annoyed, she asks him why she had to save him, but he tells her she didn't need to. After all, he's been prepared to be hated for a long time. So he begs her to wait for him for a little while, and when everything is over, he will properly apologize to her, but until then, he wants to protect her. After listening to him, she sighs and calls him a pain, reminding him that he's the one who has been at death's door most of the time, so she informs him that he won't be able to apologize to her if he dies, and she vows not to let him die until she gets the apology from him, and this makes him very happy. After that's settled, Irina turns around to head back, and she whines about using such a high-value item for nothing. He follows her silently and notes that the mysterious scroll that teleported them there is too suspicious, and it makes him wonder if the whole situation was created by someone. Elsewhere in a bar, Domerkan, the bar owner, tells a mysterious figure who shows up late that night that the bar has closed. The figure mentions his name, and he grins, cracking the plate with magic and then calling them a special guest. Since his true identity was mentioned, Demirkan asks for their purpose of visiting, and he lifts his sharp utensils which he plans to use to interrogate the personnel. When he sends them their way, the cloaked figure simply snaps their finger, and Demirkan's spell gets cancelled. He's struck on the head with a magic attack that shocks him before throwing him off. Seeing how his spatial magic was easily shattered, Demirkan asks if the figure is the Demon Lord, and it's then that she reveals herself, while extending her greetings. A couple of days later, Frey wakes up from sleep and happily tells Kanya that he slept properly for the first time in a while, and he wonders if it might be better cause he overcame his trial. She happily celebrates with him and tells him to rely on her anytime he's troubled. But before she can say what's on her mind, Irina barges in, and Kanya notes that she's no longer his sole confidant, but now a loyal subordinate. While Frey was away with Irina, a few commotions happened, but they didn't escalate to cause a major issue. When he got back, Kanya and Irina talked things through and can cooperate with each other. From Irina, they learn that Klana should be the person they are most wary of. After all, she has sensed the change in Kanya and was keeping the information from coming to light. Ever since the incident at the commoner's dormitory, Klana has been making plans to kill Frey as soon as possible. She has also won over the elders of the Moonlight family to her side, and she will stop at nothing to assassinate him. Although wary of her, Frey notes that the Senate is beyond Klana's control. While thinking about it, he decides to focus on the main quest, which should involve liberating the slave market. He also believes that the Demon Lord's army should be making their serious moves too, since that was what was written in the prophecy book. He notes that he needs to formulate a detailed strategy and avoid the danger of assassination since they have relatively more free time at the beginning of the vacation, or so he thought. Unfortunately for him, on the last day before their holidays, Islet tells them that during vacation, a special exam will be administered. Confused, Frey asks her why, since they were done with their exams, but Islet tells him it's because someone spread bribes around. It was judged that the scores held no distinguishing power, so they are to do a retest. Frey knew it was aimed at him, and he realized the others had been put in jeopardy because of his decisions. The other students complain, but Klana silences them before informing them that the retest is a strict command from the Imperial family. Frey is shocked that the Imperial family is demanding fairness in exams, and he concludes that it's Klana's doing, which means she has gained some powerful backers. Islet then continues with her explanation, telling them that the exam format is a defensive siege centered on a representative, and the team is tasked to protect their representative until the period ends. She starts by telling them that the team's representative will be decided by vote, so she separates them into commoners and nobles, asking the students to vote for the person they support the most. Frey concludes that all the commoners will vote for Klana, but as for the nobles, he isn't sure. What he knows is that anyone sensible won't choose him who is labeled as a member of the Demon Lord's army. Moments later, he's called to the stage with Klana, and he curses under his breath, calling the people who voted for him idiots. But just then, Islet tells them that she'll announce each team's representative. She calls Klana the noble team representative and Frey the commoner team representative. Upon hearing her, the students immediately riot, asking her how it turned out that way. But Islet tells them that she never said the people they picked would be their team's representative. With that, she instructs the teams to decide amongst themselves where and how they will defend, because the representative of the winning team. The team will be granted the right to expel one person from their class. Frey realizes the gravity of the matter and notes that if he's expelled, then he has terminated the system's contract, so he must win the match no matter what. After school is over, Frey heads to his mansion with Kanya and Irina, along with the commoners. He tells Kanya and Irina that they are at an overwhelming disadvantage, and if things get bad, the other side can flee to the Imperial Palace. But Kanya tells him that she has contacted the main family and requested their cooperation for the exam. Also, Irina has explained to the commoners that he might be more cooperative than expected. Frey complains about the prophecy book's content always ending slightly off, but then he requests their cooperation. Suddenly the carriage makes an abrupt stop, so Frey yells at the rider for doing something so dangerous, but he tells them that someone suddenly jumped out in front of him. The rider then tells the mysterious person to clear the way, but then Demirkan apologizes before introducing himself and saying he's come to meet with Frey. Upon hearing Demirkan's name, Frey recalls him being the Demon Lord's army's second commander. As he wonders why Demirkan showed up, Frey tells the girls to stay back while he goes outside to speak with the demon. But Kanya disagrees, saying it's too dangerous. He reassures them that Demirkan won't attack immediately and he must have some purpose. Still, Irina chooses to come along, saying they are supposed to know things concerning him. Kanya also joins in, and he agrees on the condition that he does the talking. When they show up, Demirkan asks who the ladies are, and Frey calls them his subordinates. Although it pisses Irina off, she lets it slide because she wants to know what the meetup is about. That's when Demirkan tells Frey to accompany him. Surprised, Frey accuses Demirkan boldly of wanting to abduct him, but Demirkan clears the air by saying the meeting cannot begin unless Frey is present. Confused, Frey asks him what he's talking about, and Demirkan gladly informs Frey that he has become a member of their Demon King's army's highest echelon, and this stuns the trio. Confused, Frey asks Demirkan what he meant by the highest echelon. Then he checks the system to see if Demirkan is lying, but then realizes that he's telling the truth. Although he doesn't know the details, he sees that Demirkan genuinely wants him at the meeting, so Frey calls it the perfect chance to grasp the Demon Lord's army's current military strength. Even if it's a trap, he doesn't want to miss it, so he tells Irina and Kanya to go on without him, and they are shocked by his carelessness. He glances at them and tells them to trust him, because it might be an opportunity. They agree, and as Kanya tells him to run off in case anything happens, Irina says she'll explain it to the others. With that out of the way, Frey tells Demirkan to lead the way. Demirkan smiles and then creates a portal before holding Frey and giving him a heads up about feeling lightheaded during the journey. The girls watch as they vanish, and they worry about Frey. When Frey arrives at the meeting, he sees the monsters gathered and notes how voracious they look. When they see him, they whisper, wondering why a human is in their midst. He wonders what the Demon Lord is thinking about, but then he is directed to a seat, and when he checks it out, Demirkan confirms that he will now become the Demon Lord army's number 2, just like him. At this point, Frey wonders if it's a trap, but then he notes that the treatment seems a bit too good, so he nervously smiles at Demirkan, and Demirkan tells him he's simply obeying the Demon Lord's will. Frey uses his system to check Demirkan, and once he confirms there's no sign of lies, he calls the situation convenient, in case the Demon Lord planned it. While noting that it's better than some half-hearted treatment, Frey plans to question Demirkan, but just then, an ogre demon named Rehir yells at them to halt. He steps up, brimming with energy, and walks towards Frey before announcing an objection to the final decision. He bellows, saying that although he has silently obeyed Demirkan all this while as the demon proxy, he cannot allow Frey, a weak human, to stand above him. With that, he tells Frey to draw his sword and vows to crush him like a bug. Frey then asks if the objection is valid, and Demirkan admits, before informing him that the Demon Lord's army runs on meritocracy, so one can challenge their superior at any time if they believe they are stronger. Demirkan agrees with Rehir and then snaps his fingers, noting that they should prove the Demon Lord's decision. Immediately, the space in the room changes, and the participants are put in an arena. There, Rehir introduces himself as the descendant of great demons and orcs, and says he heard Frey is a descendant of the great hero. With that, he vows to defeat Frey right there and prove that Demirkan is a fraud. He immediately dashes and makes a huge swing at Frey, but he parries the attack, and they go at it. Impressed, Rehir praises Frey before asking him how long he can go on. After clashing with him, Frey wonders who Rehir thinks he is, but then the huge orc leaps at him while yelling at Frey to show him his true power. Frey angrily stares at Rehir while noting that the Book of Prophecy is unreliable, and just as he was already furious before, he is tasked to prove his strength. Utterly pissed, he glares at Rehir, who realizes he has messed up, and then releases his overwhelming mana just as told. But he warns Rehir that it'll be too late for regrets because he's in a bad mood. Rehir immediately tries to apologize and states he surrenders, but Frey leaps at him before clashing, smacking Rehir in the jaw, sending him crashing and causing him to pass out. He then turns to the rest of them and asks them if they've got complaints like Rehir, they should come at him at once. After witnessing the one-sided fight, nobody steps up, so Demirkan commends Frey and returns everyone to the room. He then walks Frey to his seat, saying no one will dare to challenge the Demon Lord's authority. But to his surprise, Frey refuses to sit. Instead, he challenges Demirkan to a fight, noting that it would be inconvenient having two number 2. Demirkan understands what Frey means, but not that his capacity for adaptation is terrifying. From that moment, Frey chooses not to act in accordance with the Demon Lord nor the system, which doesn't go as he wants, but chooses to become the unpredictable variable. Intrigued by Frey's decision to challenge him to a duel, Demirkan calls him an interesting individual, so he proceeds, on the condition that they do not let the fight delay the meeting, and suggests they settle it in a single bout. Frey agrees with him and is glad that Demirkan went just as he had expected. He knows Demirkan as the 2 ND-ranked demon who freely manipulates space with magic and never prefers drawn-out battles, as does Frey. The men take their stance, and Demirkan notes that it's been a while since he last accepted a challenge, so he apologizes ahead of time because he misjudges his strength. Immediately, he fires out an all-out attack, but Frey grins before unleashing a quick draw, which offsets the attack. Watching as the mana cancels each other out, Demirkan concludes that the match might end in a draw, but Frey wonders if that'll be the case. He then announces that he still has other moves, and that's when Demirkan realizes he's been had, so he prepares to block it, but then sees that Frey has occupied all available space at once, with the previous flash from his blade. Demirkan then suspects how far back Frey has calculated everything, and he wonders if Frey has been waiting for such a moment. Then what kind of person is he? With that, Frey unleashes another attack, which breaks through Demirkan's space, piercing the demon in the process. Once Demirkan falls, he admits defeat, and Frey tells them all that the second position is now his. He asks for their objection, and since no one cares to question him, he commences the meeting. There, the air is heavy and no one dares speak up, so he tells them that since it's his first time, he'll let Demirkan lead the meeting. With that, the previous number 2 nervously begins, and this creeps Frey out, who for the first time experiences the effect of the hierarchy. He notes that his current position will help him obtain all the information on the Demon Lord's army without fail, and all he'll have to do is carefully select what's useful. Demirkan then moves straight to the agenda for the day. He hands them photos from a folder, and when Frey sees it, he discovers it's the slave market from the main quest. As Demirkan starts addressing the matter, Frey pays close attention and learns about their strategy and things they want to watch out for. Meanwhile, as the carriages head to the mansion, Irina is worried about Frey, but then Kanya reassures her that he'll be fine. Unfortunately, Kanya herself is the least assured, so even when Irina tries talking about another thing, she keeps mumbling to herself that Frey will be fine. Back at the meeting, Frey plans to use the demons to vary bone marrow and interfering in their plans. As soon as the carriage arrives at the Starlight Mansion, she informs Kanya. She then reminds Kanya of her task, and moments later, the commoners are brought into the place. When Kanya sees the servants, she tells them just like they have been informed beforehand that they are to leave the mansion this very day. She then turns to the commoners and tells them that starting from that moment, they will take the servants' place as the new servants of the mansion. The commoners immediately complain, but Kanya claps her hands, telling them it's enough, before ordering them to change into their prepared uniforms to begin their work, because no complaints will be accepted. She informs them that it's the command of their superior officer, Lord Frey. A girl writes a letter before giving it to an owl to deliver it, but unknown to her that Kanya is watching through her cat doll. Sometime later, Frey arrives, and Kanya worriedly runs to him. He happily greets them, but then notices that they both look very pale, so he asks them about it, but Irina doesn't snitch. Instead, she asks him what he was doing with the Demon Lord's army. He simply summarizes it to them that he is no longer just an executive, but now the second in command. Shocked, Irina prods him for the full gist, and he promises to explain in detail later. He then informs them that he has issued an order that works in his favor, which is for the demons to attack the Moonlight family's Council of Elders in his stead. Upon hearing him, she realizes that he has really thought it through. Frey then asks Kanya about the matter he requested, and she tells him that everything went as he asked, and like he predicted, there was a spy among the commoner students working for Klana. Frey knew something like that would happen, and Kanya reveals the student's name is Alice. Just as he promised, he plans to reveal the details of the meeting. But to his surprise, Alice tells him to save the details for later and get some rest, noting that he has lost quite a bit of weight since she last saw him. Frey tells her he's fine, and it's because he's hungry. He then complains that the demons didn't serve any food at the meeting, and the girls are stunned at his audacity. Shortly afterwards, Frey prepares to eat, but then he observes the abomination right in front of him and notes that he's clearly poisoned, so he yells at the cook for experimenting with his meal. While at it, he gets a déjà vu as he remembers how he used to bark at Kanya when she tried poisoning him. The cook then complains about how she is unfamiliar with the ingredients, and she simply did her best, so Frey asks for her name, and once he learns she's Alice, Klana's spy, he recounts how Alice was supposed to prevent the attack and eventually become the leader of the revolution within the school. Due to Klana's charisma, Frey doesn't find it surprising that she'll make use of Alice. He gives her a scolding before belittling her status by saying commoners will never understand. He then yells at her, saying it's why he hates commoners because they cannot do a single thing right. He insults the food before tossing the dish to the ground, shocking Alice, and then telling her not to ever serve him livestock feed again. Before leaving, he tells her he's different from her kind, then he coldly calls off. As rehearsed, Kanya worriedly goes after him, trying to calm him down, but he orders her to be quiet. Alice is sincerely pained from the insults and bad treatment, but when her friend shows up worried, Alice smiles at her and says she just has to endure it until the vacation is over. Some nights later, Frey rests outside, and he's surprised he earned so many villain points. But he still considers looking for more opportunities to earn a bit more. He notes that it's been 6 days since the siege started and wonders if Klana hasn't made a move. Frey recounts how he set up insurance for the Council of Elders using the Demon Lord's army, but the demons said they wouldn't be able to move immediately. He suddenly hears the sound of swords clashing and notes it's coming from the mansion, so he wonders if they are under an attack from Klana and the others. He immediately picks up his sword and dashes straight for the mansion, but on arrival, he sees his servants knocked out, so he tries waking them up and gaining information. When he sees that the guards aren't seriously wounded, he dashes straight inside while wondering if everyone in there is safe. As soon as he enters, he senses the atmosphere has been poisoned, and it's highly likely that of the Moonlight family. He quickly covers his nose while noting that if the poison is carelessly inhaled, one won't regain consciousness for several hours. He then decides to neutralize the poison with astral mana, noting it to be a burden, but he has no other choice. As Frey gets to the hallway, he sees that almost everyone has been taken out, so he heads upstairs, noting that he heard a sound coming from there, and when he checks the place out, he sees a ninja, so he sneaks up on the person and bonks him with his sword. After observing the dead messenger, Frey notes that the current situation isn't a part of the siege battle, but an independent operation by Klana. He then chooses to put on the fallen ninja's outfit, and he gives a fake report to an upper-ranked ninja. The ninja clicks his tongue before informing Frey that they need to move quickly to make up for the delay. Frey agrees, and he's glad the ninja didn't notice, so he ensures he'll find out their goal for coming to his mansion. And he plans to make him spill Klana's plans and also those of the Council of Elders. In the basement, Alice sees Ferlush lying unconscious, so she assures her friend that nothing is wrong with her. She also informs her that it's safer in the basement than in the hallways or the rooms. While she notes that the trouble has reduced, Alice says there were many unconscious people, and she doesn't think they can carry them all by themselves. She then suggests it's best they call for help. As they leave the basement, Alice notes that even though Frey is a piece of trash who deserves to die, the Council of Elders didn't need to involve everyone in such a mess. She notes that they weren't acting as promised, and the timing of the schedule was different from what she had learned, so she wonders if the Council of Elders changed the plan on their own. Since all that thinking won't solve the matter on the ground, she decides she has to get as many people as possible safely outside. Unfortunately, her friend hears some footsteps. Meanwhile, the ninjas gather, and their boss informs them that their target is Frey, and it doesn't matter what happens to the others. If the ninjas' faces are seen or the other students interfere with the mission, the ninjas are tasked to kill them. With that, he orders them to move out, and Frey immediately hurries to the nearest mana reaction he senses. Upon getting there, he notes that the air in the room is remarkably clear. That's when he realizes that they pushed the poison out with mana. He examines the room and traces the source of mana. That's when he sees it's coming from under a cloak. So he opens it and sees a group of students hiding there. Realizing they've been had, they quietly say their last prayers, but Frey surprises them by telling them to be quiet. Unfortunately for them, another ninja shows up, asking if there's anyone in the room. So Frey lies that he has found a hidden passage. Curious, the ninja heads to the cloak to see what's underneath, and when he peeks, Frey kills him. He then orders the students to follow him, warning them to stay quiet until they get outside. With that, he silently leads them outside, and they thank him for his help, but then they curiously ask him why. Before he can talk, Frey hears from the comm that there has been a change of plans, and the communication with the other ninja allies has been cut off. While he signals to the students to be quiet, the announcer presumes the student resisted, and Frey wonders if they've been found out. The voice then continues saying that they've received a report from the headquarters that the Council of Elders has been attacked by demons. On hearing this, Frey realizes that it went well. It's just that the next news shocks him because the ninjas are instructed to set the mansion ablaze. A shout erupts from the comm, and Frey wonders what caused it. Meanwhile, Irina burns the ninja who instructs the others. Ariane then tells her that they can go down to the first floor from the stairs she just found. Irina then leads the way and tells the others to follow her closely from behind, but to her surprise, she sees a ninja heading her way, and as she prepares to fight him, he signals to her to be quiet. She then observes his aura and suspects he's Frey. Confused, she wonders what's going on, but he quickly takes his leave, and it surprises Ariane, who didn't know it was Frey. When she tries asking Irina about it, Irina tells her it's best they get out of the mansion. Frey then watches her leave and heads straight to the basement to check and quickly organize the situation. On his way there, he runs into Alice and her friend, and Alice fearfully defends her friend, saying she has nothing to do with it. She then chooses to take responsibility and pleads with Frey not to lay his hands on anyone else, and it makes him wonder if she was directly connected to the Council of Elders instead of Klana. He then surprises them by instructing her to go. She thanks him and then tells him that many students are lying unconscious in the basement warehouse and he should please guarantee their safety. He then tells her he'll do his best, and she thanks him. As Frey leaves for the basement, he notes that neutralizing poison with just mana puts a heavy burden on the body, and because he overexerted himself to maintain tension during the Demon Lord's army meeting, his body isn't in top condition. With no time to rest, he dashes straight to the basement, but just then, a kunai flies his way and he runs into the ninja boss, who identifies that Frey isn't a part of the Council of Elders. The man then asks Frey who he is, but Frey pulls out his katana and clicks his tongue for running into the big boss there. Seeing that Frey isn't ready to talk, the boss draws out his blades and vows to tear Frey into 8 pieces, leaving only his mouth intact. Frey gets excited and tells him that the ones who'll get torn into pieces are those who involve innocent students. With that, he dashes at the man, labeling him as the one who will get shredded. He clashes with the ninja leader and evades a swipe attack. Suddenly, he sees someone else, so he ducks just in time and avoids the hit. The boss commends him on his quick reaction, and Frey wonders if the other opponents were hiding from the very start. He counts them and notes they are 3 of them. But just then his heart starts aching, and he realizes that the battle may be more troubling than he thought. The men continue attacking him, but he defends himself and tries slashing them, and he sees them skillfully dodge his swings. He then knocks one out, but then another stabs him in the foot, so he kicks the ninja who did it and then looks for the last one. Unfortunately for him, he gets stabbed from behind, and the ninja tells him it's over. To the man's surprise, Frey grabs the sword and expels mana outside, and the man finds it hard to pull it out, and notes that he cannot move. Frey immediately returns the favor after telling the ninja, who tries fleeing after stabbing his torso. While holding his bleeding wound, Frey notes that his original goal was to find out about the Council of Elders' plan. But thanks to the Demon Lord's army, it's no longer necessary, so he's changing plans. He staggers as he heads to the warehouse where he plans to get everyone out to safety, but then notes that he feels dizzy, which he thinks is likely the effect of blood loss and poison. Suddenly, Irina calls out to him, and once she sees his injuries, she refuses to believe he's fine like he claims, so she lets him use her shoulder and tells him they are going outside to get him treated, but Frey refuses and tells them that there are several people left behind in the underground warehouse. Once she hears him, she takes him there and sees Furlosh and the others sprawled on the floor, so Frey tells them to split up and carry them out, and she's shocked by his tenacious will. Now that she has the power, she tells him to stay put and rest. Then she tells him she can handle the people by herself. And thanks to Kanya, who taught her a lot, it won't be much of a problem. With that, she uses magic to lift the unconscious students and carries them outside, but before she leaves, she tells him she'll be right back, and he shouldn't dare move around on his own, else he'll get it from her. He quiets down, and as soon as she leaves, he sees a book which he suspects is Furlosh's diary. Despite the warnings, Frey takes a peek and sees her write out important things which she mustn't forget. As he reads further, he sees where she wrote an instruction where one must read the first character of each date together. Wondering if it's some kind of code, Frey flips through the pages, and as he connects the character of each date, he sees how dark Furlosh's diary is. But at the end of the day, he arrives at the thing that must not be forgotten, half-demon god. Frey is utterly confused and admits that he has no idea of what it meant, so he wonders if she has noticed something that he doesn't know about, so he wonders what it could be. Just then, Irina shows up and offers to give him a piggyback ride. Frey feels embarrassed, so he tells her he's heavy and it's best she use her mana. Irina then reveals that her mana is limited, so it's the best option, and left with no choice, Frey is carried off. On the way, Irina tells him that Islet and Klana are outside the mansion, and it'll be a pain to find them, so it's better they hide quickly. He agrees with her and notes that Klana is surely coming to confirm whether he's alive or dead. Outside, Klana learns about the ninja's failure, and Frey says she truly hates him. Irina, on the other hand, carries him off into the woods and lays him down. She then observes his bleeding, noting its severity, and sees that he has managed to escape death. She tries reassuring Frey that Kanya should arrive soon, but just then, an owl carrying a letter flies towards them. When it sees Irina, it gets mad and rams into her. Not only that, it keeps using its talons to torment her. And due to the ruckus, Frey sits up and sees the bird. Then he notes that it's the same one Selena keeps as a pet. The owl lands on his palm, and he wonders what Selena is trying to tell him all of a sudden.